Hello, I'm Jim Jesus, and welcome to the Classical Lolbert Project, a podcast of the Classical Lolbert Caucus, a totally real caucus within the Lolbertarian Party, where we stand for things like expanding federal overreach and other things that'll hopefully get us invited to the elite's piss orgies. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a conservative libertarian YouTube vlogger that touches on culture and politics, both in the United States and his home country of England, so forgive him for his Britishness. His former channel, Charming Man 93, was covering all of the going-ons of the early 2010s battle of the men's rights movements and feminism after Atheism Plus. A man who is not afraid to speak out when people he considers to be his political peers to do counterproductive things. He is a connoisseur of a casual look enjoyer, and a person I consider his friend as far as internet friends can possibly be. I could not think of a better person to kick off the new show with. So, ladies and Lolberts, I present to you, ya boy, Mitch. So how's it going, Mitch? I haven't talked to you in 4 minutes. 9/11. We're going to hell.
We're going to go to hell. Oh, it's all right, actually. Not too bad.
No, I haven't talked to you in a minute.
Yeah,
not even in private, like not even in the Discord server or anything. Just I've been so busy lately.
Because I've been working in retail for so long, it does start to get really, really busy. But I'm leaving retail finally. I'll be working in IT. I will be learning on the job and stuff. Yeah. So like
you learned to code. Like a real journalist.
Not coding. I imagine they'll probably teach me a little bit. Maybe it's more maintaining infrastructures and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, and I've done it way later in life than I thought I should. But you know, I didn't know back in the day when I was young and dumb that I could actually do that. And the thing is, when I started my channel, I was unemployed, fresh out of uni. So like back then I couldn't even do apprenticeships and stuff like I can do now. So yeah, my life is getting on track. I never felt like my life was on track until recently. So yeah. Yeah, I'm now even more productive than I used to be.
That's unfortunate.
I know.
Yeah, I'm still wrangling. I can't say that word on all these platforms.
There would have been a video last week, but I came down with some. I assume it was fatigue. So I would have done the video. No, it wasn't long COVID. I only had the short COVID. In fact, I think I beat it earlier than most people did, but I had to stay for the 10 days just to be sure.
That's always fun. So I have a question for you, and it's been bugging me for like the longest time. And I've talked to you in Discord for how long we've been talking, like hanging out in like Discord servers.
Since
I think it's actually started with Danny's server, didn't we?
Yeah, Danny, also True Dill Tom.
Did you chat?
He's still alive.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Neuro poster. Yeah, but whatever happened to Charming Man 93? Because that's how I found you. Yeah, because I found you because I was kind of really interested in the whole like Atheism Plus debacle.
See, I was never part of that though. Atheism Plus. Right. That was before my time.
But you kind of came out.
In that. Yeah.
But I want to say you were in the same kind of family of people who were. That's why I kind of included in the intro. And I know you want to get into something else that was in the intro. But that you kind of were surrounding yourself with a lot of the people that were kind of talking about that at the time, even though maybe you weren't for any of those people. Like Wooly Bumblebee, I remember was around at the time.
Oh God, yeah, that was. Oh God.
Who was the two that were dating? It was like Feminism Law and John.
Law.
I think his name is John. He used to work for A Voice for Men until he got kicked out for criticizing Molyneux.
Oh, I know who
Bald
you mean. John the Other and
John
Diane.
The Other, yeah.
Diane, yeah. I think they're technically common law married, weren't they?
Yeah. It's Canadian law.
I don't know if I don't know if they're still together. I've not heard much about them for a while. I know that she's got a podcast going on and he's doing whatever he wants to do. But Yeah,
Actually, we were kind of friendly, Danny and I. It was because she was on the Freedom Fiends for a while, and we were planning on doing some sort of like thing together, but we never did.
what
After she
funnily
left the
enough,
Fiends.
years later, because I didn't know those two, I just watched them occasionally. I
Hmm.
knew Bane 666 AU. He was, like the one who knew them personally, and I knew him. That's how I got into meeting all these different people, was through him.
Hmm.
And Megan, who's done really well since, the Squid guy, fellow
Okay.
Brit. Um, but years later, I ended up finding this channel called Freedom Alternative, who's you might have heard of. I guess he's a libertarian, kind of, because more definitely what I would call a conservative libertarian. I'm nowhere near as conservative as him. He was on the board. He might still be on the board for Voice for Men. He was there
Okay.
from the beginning, and he's from Romania. Like, it's weird how I never came across him back in the day, and I did a few years ago now, not looked back since. Like, he's been quite an influence on me recently. But yeah, back in the day, those are special times. I look back on them. Yeah, there's some stuff that I probably shouldn't have done, shouldn't have covered, things that I should have learned to do
Hmm.
that I've now learned to do now. I should have done at the time. But basically, with Charming Man 93, I got really fed up with doing response videos all the time, and the algorithm had just kicked in, starting to affect channels, and I just thought, well, it's not working. I'm not growing. At least I saw I wasn't growing. They were beginning to affect me. I thought, well, if I start a new channel, then maybe I can get away from it. No, I didn't get away from it.
No, because you're not saying the right things. You're not on the 3x5 card of allowable opinion.
I thought I
So
could slip through under the radar,
no.
but I'm quite happy where I am now because it's more of a hobby. It became a bit more. It came more of my life than it should have been.
Hmm.
And influence is more important than popularity anyway. And I do feel, even though I don't have as much popularity, I've got more influence. Like, I can go talk to somebody, and and if they know who I am, they're more likely to believe what I say or take on board what I have to say.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that. I'd rather be behind the scenes than right out there in public, even though I probably have the public speaking skills to do that, because I have actually done public speaking in what we do. For
You ever did Toastmasters or?
No, I did a speech in Manchester last 2 years. No, last year. Was it
Hmm.
last year? Was it 2 years ago? It was whenever I got COVID. I got COVID right after that. I did it for Scrub Monkey, for his organization Nomos. I was one of the first ones with my friend British Knight. So that was the first IRL thing I ever did. That wasn't just like being in a meetup and just chatting with people. And
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, that's the short end of it. Really, I got fed up doing response videos. Although now I kind of miss them now. It's funny how it works
Yeah,
because you can't
I've
do them
noticed.
anymore.
Yeah, it used to be, I don't know if you were around back in the early days, but in YouTube land, if
Yeah.
you could actually like when you
Mm.
responded to a video, you could actually like there was a feature on the thing so that you would hit respond,
Yeah, I remember that.
upload a video,
Mm.
and then on your video, it would say on the video that you uploaded, it would say this is a video response to this video, and you can go back and watch that video,
Yeah.
and then on their video, it would say like, "Here's the people who were responding to this video," and it kept like a dialogue going. But then they just got rid of it, and there
Yeah,
was a good
they don't
reason to
like
get.
it. Yeah. Mm.
There was a good reason to get rid of it because what people would do would they would
Mhm.
create like these really spammy videos, and a lot of
Mm.
content creators, especially big ones, just like I don't want to deal with going through and sorting out like
Reply
all the
girls.
video responses. So they just yeah. So they just they just automatically approved all of them. And so people were like, you'd go to the video responses, and it would be like, but there's got to be some other way to kind of filter that stuff out. I mean,
I know.
YouTube's been there out in the algorithm now.
Mm.
Um, so I
One
mean
thing that's
that
good
kind
for
of
a
cut the.
response video is that it gets people talking about the subject,
Mhm,
but they're not evergreen, so it's not good for your channel. But people will remember it
mhm,
because you may have exposed something that somebody never would have thought of exposing. So I remember Lacey Green did a video. It was some stupid shit about rape culture and stuff, right? And then
the typical Lacey Green video at the
yeah,
time, yeah.
she oh, I don't think she ever really changed, but oh well.
Well,
Uh,
she had changed her opinion, but her
I don't think she
line of
did.
reasoning was always. Maybe, but I remember when she first started dating Chris Raygun.
He changed more
The
than she did.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
He did an
Um,
iDubbbz before iDubbbz, but not as bad. Not as bad.
oh, but I remember that when she started like was kind of tiptoeing the line of like criticizing feminism, but she wasn't really doing anything like substantial. It was always just kind of like, here are all these questions.
Mm.
It's like, well, you're not addressing any of the
I
questions.
just
You're
have
just
these questions.
Yeah, well, not even, she wasn't even questioning things.
Mm.
She was just saying, "Here are some questions people have about this topic," and it's like, and I remember, you probably remember Dick Coughlin. I remember he was
Yeah, I
like,
do.
"What the
I
fuck
helped him
is
once
this?"
actually.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
a
you did? Oh,
story we
nice.
can get into.
Oh, wow. I
But
didn't even
like
think about Dick Coughlin.
no,
I knew
but
him too,
anyway, so
sort of.
in the response video I did to her, this is probably one of the last big radical feminist ones she did publicly.
Mhm.
She quoted this guy talking about rape kits. Are we even allowed to say that? Oh, it doesn't matter. So,
Well,
she was.
all my
Oh, we're
YouTube
on
stuff is
Odyssey,
gonna.
aren't we? That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I'm
so
not used
yeah,
to it.
my YouTube stuff, like it's gonna go
Mm,
unlisted afterwards,
mm.
and then so if you have a link to it, you'll still watch it.
Because they
But
don't like that
you,
word. Yeah.
yeah.
But
By the
like,
way, here's a
so he was
lesson to
talking.
content creators, by the way.
Mm,
Never delete your videos. Private them. Because if
mm,
they get dinged for something and they're gone, you can't ever appeal it.
mm. So like,
I learned that the hard way. Go
it was a
ahead.
police guy. He was talking about rape kits and stuff. And they were moved to like a hospital, or there was some process had changed, and she chopped the audio. She chopped the video to make it look like he was doing something nefarious. But when you actually dig into what he actually said, because I found the original news report, it's nothing. It was just a change of procedure, nothing more. And she was twisting it into, oh, look at the evil sexist patriarchy attacking rape victims, female rape victims, obviously. And it's like, no, they're trying to help the victims by changing the by bringing them to the hospital rather than the police station or wherever it was. It was a long time ago, and the guy wasn't trying to harm women in any way. And it was me who found that, and everybody else was responding just to her. And I was like, well, let's see, is this actually right? No, it's complete bullshit. But then also when you do response videos, you create a lot of enemies, and people who will hate you forever and ever and ever. So
Mhm.
one of the guys who later became known as the Doctor of Bearing and Sugar Tits, Danny Courts, I responded to some girl once. Who, to me, like to him, and apparently to her, I never got her opinion on it. But to him, this was the worst, one of the most significant events of his life. Me responding to this red-haired girl. But to me, it was Tuesday.
You're like a
And
regular M. Bison.
yeah, yeah. Like to him, it was like this evil, horrible, immoral thing that I responded to some girl who made a silly video on feminism or something, and I made a few jokes in there. I obviously didn't mean any of it because of the jokes, and he was trying
Mhm.
to make out that I was creepy or something. And he obviously knew more about her than I did. I thought she was just some 18-year-old student. Apparently, she was like 16. Like, how am I supposed to know that? I don't know that. I just see a woman online respond.
Yeah.
I don't even care about her as a person necessarily when I do that. It's just a joke. And then I did make serious points, and he was like, "Oh, you creepy, blah blah blah." You know, this guy, when you look at his picture, he's one of the most creepiest looking dudes on the planet.
Yep.
But yeah, he
Never
hated me
fails.
forever after that, and I'm just like, mate, it's just a response video. Chill out. And then there was another one as well he didn't like me doing. And then he came back after a while on Twitter. He blocked me, but he would unblock just to respond to me, and then he disappeared again. And that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do miss response videos,
Yeah, I wish there was some other way of bringing it back. Maybe
but I don't
Odyssey.
want to do it at the same time because it's just not
Yeah, it's not
fulfilling.
evergreen. I do like the whole
Ranting
evergreen stuff.
about idiots who don't know what they're doing is far more evergreen because people can learn from their mistakes.
Yeah. Especially a lot of that stuff when you talk about like not being evergreen. I remember like where people they'd be on like their fifth response,
Hmm,
back and forth.
hmm,
And you would get like these cut up videos to the point where you're like, if you're not following that whole conversation,
hmm,
if you didn't watch all the videos in succession, you're gonna be like, wait, is this right now? Or is this before? Like, is this the third video or is this the second video? Is this you recording now? Like, what is like? I don't know what's happening, and it would be so cut up. And not only that, but they would also include the parts of them inside of the video of the response to them, so you would hear it like 3 times. So then they would be like, "Oh, by the way, let's actually listen to what I really said," and then they would play the long version. It's like, I just heard this like 10 times, and it's the same video. Please.
I definitely used to repeat myself a lot more back then, but I've learned to catch that and delete it promptly. Even if it means more jump cuts, it's like, just don't repeat yourself. I've mastered the art to create something out of crap. So,
are you saying that Charming Man 93 was crap?
Yeah, actually, in many ways, I was crap. Yeah, I was. I've become more. I'm trying to think of the word. I've definitely become more concise than I used to be. Back then, I used to make really long videos. Now I think my videos don't even break 15 minutes often. So that's good, in my opinion, because I'm not wasting anybody's time or my time. But also, I don't have the time to make very long videos. I'd love to, though. But I need to make sure I don't repeat myself. I'd have to script them. But I follow the razor fist line of making videos, which is outline either in your head or on like Word, and just go for it. I'm not as verbose as him, but you know.
Are you also want to include also do the worst Dennis Miller impression ever?
I'm nowhere near as good at making off the fly jokes like he is.
So when did you start getting into the whole like I mean, I remember there was a term for a lot of these things. There was like the great debate was the atheist versus Christian debates. And those are
SJW versus anti SJW, right? Was my thing.
Yeah.
Well, I was a viewer before I was a creator, so that was 2014. So that was Gamergate and stuff like that. That's when I really got into it. That's when I stopped being a normie.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think I was a normie.
That's when you got put on the watch list.
I'm pretty sure I was almost a normie, but if it wasn't for the fact that I was a gamer, I would have been a full-on normie probably, you know, because I was still quite left-wing back then. Although I was not your run-of-the-mill one, really, when I look back. Like, I was never a feminist. I never really got it. Like, I was like, okay, yeah, equal rights and all that, but you definitely don't like men. I got that vibe, and then as the idiot artist that I am, I took it literally and thought, well, how can I be a feminist? I'm a man. Which ended up being
that's a turf line, though.
Well, they're right in a way. A man shouldn't be a feminist, but for self-preservational reasons, because they're out to get you. And I'm not joking. They are out to get you. For these crazy delusional sense of revenge, as if men had wronged women in some way, even though the history is way more complicated and on a case-by-case basis. It's not a long history of men hating women and oppressing them. It's not. And it's not vice versa either, but because then obviously there is an equal reaction to it. And finally, the red pillars, which I hate calling them red pillars because they're not red pilled. They may be a little bit. They
took the whole bottle.
Yeah, they took the whole bottle. Yeah, so you know, people like Andrew Tate's a grifter. All the pickup artists are grifters. They're not red pilled in any way. There's a reason why they burn so bright and then die off so quickly. You know, like Roosh V, those types of people. Like, there is that stuff has happened. Yeah, I guess he was kind of like that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
A little bit. I know all the keyboard shortcuts. Do you remember that? Oh, God, that was funny.
You know what's funny is, like, I remember Davis Arini, but I'm always have to be reminded of the keyboard shortcut meme. And then when I hear it, I just start dying.
I know all the keyboard shortcuts.
I'm telling you, man, if you ever have an opportunity, if you're watching this, you need to go track down a copy. There's copies of it online still. Track down a copy
of the Jordan Owen version.
No, not that. No, worse.
Oh, the Davis Arini cut.
No. That he had to take that down overall because they're having a lawsuit.
Really?
Well, they have like a bunch of like court stuff that they were not to get into the Jordan Owen stuff because I know that if he probably keeps an eye on my channel every once in a while. I'm not sure, but I have seen him in my comment section.
I briefly knew him at one point. Yeah,
but that's not so much that. It was their first project together, which was Less Than the Time of Heartache. If you haven't had an opportunity to go see Less Than the Time of Heartache, watch it. It is the cringiest thing. Yeah, well, he did the music for it because you know Jordan Owen is a musician, but it's the cringiest short film you will ever see in your entire life.
Wait, is that the one with the fight?
Yeah, where they're
Yeah, I've
fighting
seen that.
most of it,
I
and
didn't know
Iranian's
Sean
like,
Owen did the music.
yeah, and him pontificating in a narration on top of the whole thing, which is it's all like hollow platitudes and
Mm.
like pretentious nonsense that really
I've
just
seen that. I've
kind of
seen it.
translates
Yeah, it's
to.
funny. I
You
can't
could just
remember
boil that
who.
whole down. You can boil that whole entire platitude
Mm.
down to we're in a state of decay or cultural decay. The end.
I think it's gotten worse since him.
Yeah.
There's way more pretentious so-called right wingers than there was back in the day.
Yeah, I think he was overdoing it, but I think the people that are being pretentious now, they're a little bit more effective at it. Like it's getting past the smell test of more people was what I mean. Not so much that they're better people.
Well, when they're all
Um,
huffing their farts, how can they tell?
yeah. So, I
Did I
know. Remember
answer your
you did it.
question?
Oh,
I don't even
sorry.
know if I did. What was your question?
That was a good. I don't remember.
Okay, next one.
I think
Moving
we were
on.
on the. I think we were kind of just more like walking down memory lane. Maybe I'll remember. But I remember you did a video not too long ago talking
Hmm.
about how a lot of right wingers and conservatives and Republicans and Tories were taking up like sides with TERFs, which are trans exclusionary radical
Yeah.
feminists, and it's because they may be right on a couple of issues, and they think that like if they take their side that that these people can change, or that these people are good or something like that, or they have some common ground when they really don't. A
Hmm.
lot of their kind of criticisms of that whole kind of movement stem from a very different worldview that is completely incompatible in the same way that like when I see like anarchist like communists try to like, or when I see like anarcho-capitalists try to team up with anarcho-communists and be like, well, we're both against the state. It's like, mm, um, yeah, if you redefine the state in two different ways, then we have that in common. But in practice, they don't. They're very much for
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah. So like, I understand. I understand that. Yeah. When there's an issue such as the trans issue
Hmm.
that is so hot button, and it is really important because it is affecting not just the lives of adults, but now it's affecting children, that you will inevitably end up like that stone toss meme when you're doing the tug of war and then you turn to the side and you see this random person who you hate on your side. I understand that's going to inevitably
Huh?
happen, right? Huh? Right? Yeah, that's going to happen. I understand. But it should only ever be about convenience. But the problem is a lot of the people on the right, and I've seen it with the Lotus Eaters with Posey Parker. They actively endorse these people. It's not a case of we'll put you on our show just to get your point of view, so we understand this side of the debate. Like they did that during Brexit. They did it correctly, where they well, Tony Benn is he's no longer with us. He was a Labour MP, a really famous one. But he was anti-Brexit. That was the old Labour of the 70s and 80s and 60s, more 70s and 80s, and like Sargon would show his views and stuff like that, but he didn't endorse him as a fellow Brexiteer. It's just this is a guy from the left. We are totally opposite. Yeah, when it comes to Brexit, look how powerful these arguments are. And other people did it with other Labour MPs from back in the day, although they didn't really talk to ones from now because it was never a polarized left-right issue as the media and the academia have successfully painted it as. It was never like that. Maybe in the 80s when the Tories were the Remain party and stuff like that, but by the 21st century it was left and right. Nobody endorsed the other side. It was we are Brexit, we are fighting for Brexit, or we are fighting for Remain. It's convenience, and then once this is done, we'll go back to each other's throats. But with the TERFs, it seems to be different. It seems like these are people we should be allied with. We should, or at the very least, be friendly with. I'm like, we shouldn't be friendly with these people because we were fighting them not too long ago. These were the people who were spearheading the initial censorship and destruction of the English language and God knows what other foreign language to make it more gender neutral. Because I remember as a kid, literally right in front of me, they were changing, trying to change. They did successfully, at least when it came to job description stuff like that. They stopped calling people actresses or a saleswoman or waitress, and would just use
stewardesses.
they'll just use the male version as a neutral pronoun.
Mhm.
That was the TERFs. Maybe the intersectionals as well, but nobody really heard of them at the time, you know.
And I remember
They
this
were
was
doing,
like even in the 90s, like there was
yeah.
the history thing where they were trying to change history,
Her
and a lot of people were
story,
upset because it
yeah.
was like, like you're trying to change history. It's like, well, sort of. They're doing something more nefarious. They're
Yeah,
destroying
they
language.
started all that stuff. And in
Yeah.
fact, when you look at Jermaine Gray's work, when you look at I'm trying to think of other TERFs. There are other TERFs. A lot of them are postmodernists, like her,
Mhm.
and they deconstructed masculinity. And then they influenced the people after them who were intersectionals, who then thought, well, if we can deconstruct masculinity, we can deconstruct femininity. Maybe, obviously, when they deconstructed femininity, it was for good. For them, it was for good, but they've ended up creating a monster that they can't control or
Yeah.
don't want to control. And we're now at a point where they're fighting. This is a feminist civil war. We shouldn't really be picking sides in that civil war. We should be egging both on to destroy each other. But apparently not. J.K. Rowling is now based because she doesn't like trans people. I'm like, well, no. Bear in mind, she was all for the woke stuff until it affected her.
Yeah, I
Graham
remember her and
Linehan,
Molyneux used to get into it back and forth.
yeah, like she said Hermione was black at one point, even though she knew Hermione wasn't black. She wrote her as white because in some random play in some random place they did like a play version of Harry Potter, and they cast a black girl to play Hermione, and then she defended it, saying, "Oh look, well, Hermione's black, Dumbledore's gay," even though Dumbledore was not written as gay in the books. Apparently, like she never mentioned his sexuality. She just retroactively said that he was gay. And that became a meme, didn't it? Like, oh, look at her. She's retroactively changing her canon without writing
Yeah.
anything to appeal to these SJWs, because she is one. But once she says trans women aren't women, oh no, I'm one of you guys now. Like, no, throw her into the fire with the rest of them. Sorry, gulag, whatever. Like,
well,
no,
I mean, if
she's
this
not
was
based.
Catalonia, it'd be the concentration camps. That was the
Oh.
term they used for them. It's an unfortunate name.
Oh dear. Seriously, why are these people considered based? They're not. And far too many people support her. Like, look, it's one thing to like support her rights and stuff, to say what she wants to say, but we should be supporting her goals, because
Yeah.
ultimately it's not about trans people with TERFs. It isn't, because they don't see trans people as trans. They see them as men or women. If you're male to female, if you feel female to male, I guess you're a traitor. They don't really talk about female to male much, to be fair, TERFs, but I imagine they see them as gender traitors, whereas they really don't like the male to female because they see them as infiltrators. Like, the patriarchy has sent them in there to disrupt the feminist movement and the sisterhood, even though, in my opinion, the reason why they are the way they are is because we've potentially maybe have made a mistake in how we deal with gender dysphoria. But that's a debate we should have, really, to, you know, should it be therapy? Should it be surgery? You know, I still haven't really made my mind up on that, but we could have potentially made a mistake if you think about it. Even after surgery, there's a high suicide risk.
Yeah, this
But
is
no, we don't
There's
talk
no
about
evidence
that
that any
stuff.
of that stuff
Yeah,
fixed.
we don't talk about that. We don't talk about what, well, some people do. The ones who really have their ear on the ground, they don't talk about how the whole TERF thing really is just man hatred. That's really all it is. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, they
And
just
I
don't.
can't ally
They just see
myself
them
with
all as
them. I
men.
can't, because
They hate men.
I could.
Yeah.
I could be playing tug of war with a lesbian feminist, as long as she's not like a rabid anti-male. I mean, she's going to be anti-male anyway as a feminist, but as long as she's not too much of a TERF, it'd be all right. But I've got to watch my back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But nobody's
Maybe
watching their
more.
back. Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more old school ones, or those tend to be a little bit. But I mean, those are very few and far between, and it's you might as well just assume that those don't exist.
Camille Paley is the only one worth listening to, in my opinion.
I heard that like Helen Joyce was a TERF, but I mean,
Everybody's a TERF nowadays.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a feminist,
I've been called that. Yeah, and
I've been
like,
called that. I'm like, you. If only you knew.
yeah, like no. But yeah, I'm not sure because it didn't like as I read that book. It's a really great book. She wrote a book called Trans, and it's about the whole gender ideology thing and
But
what
this
it's
is
doing to women
the
and
flip
children.
side of it. Yeah, women and children, as opposed to who it's really been affecting for far longer, men and boys.
Hmm.
In fact, it was boys who were experimented on first, and
Hmm.
men. But apparently, it's a female problem. But that's just society, isn't it? Women most affected. It only gets dealt with when women start feeling the effects. You know,
Yeah,
it's true, guys. Sorry.
yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. So speaking of speaking of gender ideology, let's talk about pedos.
Uh-oh.
I remember. So
Nonsense.
I remember you were talking about Amos Yee like long before like he was even on my radar because I did not know who he was. I've heard some rumblings
Big
of who he was.
fucking stroking on.
Yeah, that guy. And I remember you did some like video. You did some video about him like way back in the day, and I was like, I can't be bothered with this.
Yeah, he was
Um,
defending the pedos, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Mm,
see the thing, like a lot of times, like people will make like these kind of statements, and when you're talking about a lot of people who spend people like us who spend
mm,
like hours and hours and hours behind a microphone and putting our stuff out in the public, eventually
mm,
we're going to say something stupid, or something that we didn't really think about
mm,
too much, and we just kind of go like, well, this kind of makes sense. And then when you really
mm,
think about it, you're like, oh, that's really bad. And it's when you kind of delve into topics like children and sexuality,
mm.
that opens up a giant can of worms that no one agrees with. And as soon as you have like one mild disagreement with any of that stuff, like, oh, you're a
You're a
pedophile. You need
nonce.
to go,
You're a
yeah.
pedo. Rah!
So like and I knew this really kind of early on. So like
Mm,
I was always kind of skeptical of anybody who was
mm.
going around claiming people were pedophiles. Like that's always was a giant like. But
I
now it
wasn't the
seems to
only
be like,
person who responded to that as well. I wasn't the only
yeah.
one. But the thing is, he kept doing it, and people were wondering, is it a troll? Is it not a troll? I mean, he kept doing it, and he was always
Well, so wait,
serious. He
we shouldn't bury the lead. We should actually say who Amos Yee
All
is.
right. So Amos Yee
Yeah.
is a Singaporean troll slash uh, activist. I really don't know what he was. He came to fame because in Singapore, which is Disneyland with the death penalty, to quote William Gibson, it's a very authoritarian country.
Mhm.
Like obviously nowhere near as bad as China, but basically you can get the cane for littering.
Yeah.
They also
There
have
was a big story in the 90s.
that was William
It
Gibson.
was
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was so big
Mm,
that
mm,
Weird Al included it in one of his songs called Headline News, which like the three stories that were in that were like the big stories of the day, which was Lorena Bobbitt, Tanya Harding, and this guy who went to Singapore and brought a lot of can of spray paint and they caned him.
yeah. And William
'Cause
Gibson wrote a whole article about Singapore and how it's not this perfect world that people say it is. It's quite authoritarian and stuff like that.
someone should send that to Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh is an idiot.
Yeah,
Uh,
he is.
but anyway, so he in Singapore they have really strict speech laws in regards to religion and stuff like that. Not because it's not because they're woke or anything like that. It's for another dumb reason. It's because they want societal harmony because Singapore was actually it's quite an artificial city state because it was actually created by the British as a
Oh, to Hong
naval.
Kong, yeah.
No, Hong Kong was always Hong Kong. It was always a village surrounded by a load of islands and stuff like
Mhm.
that. That was a lease anyway, except for one part of it, which was actually part of Britain, which we gave back. But that's complicated history. But Singapore, we built ourselves. We founded that, and obviously it was always going to be mostly Asian because that's what it was built for. But it was mainly a naval base for trade and the Royal Navy, and eventually became its own country, city state. And it's full of different ethnicities and religions. So you've got Buddhists, you've got Hindus, Muslims, Christians, a lot of Christians because of the British connection, and they want societal harmony. So they outlaw anything that could be offensive or cause civil disturbance in regards to religion. And what he did, because he was an edgy boy atheist, he criticized Islam. I think he may have done Christianity too. So he was making fun of them and stuff like that, and he did stuff with the Quran that you shouldn't do, and he got put in jail for it. And then eventually, this reached the West, and we obviously were had an outcry over this. How dare the Singaporeans do this? Which is fair enough that they shouldn't be. Like, I mean, if they're that worried about civil disturbances in regards to religion, maybe they should allow their people to have a bigger backbone. But that's just my opinion. You know, I don't know. Deal with the banter. But yeah. So he applied for. Eventually, he applied for asylum and got it. And then as soon as he got that, he started talking about paedophiles. So it used to just be religion and stuff like that. And he did actually attack the far left, but then he became a commie. That could have been trolling. He was a troll. And because he had this history of trolling, people didn't take him. Some people did, some people didn't. Like, well, he could just be taking the piss. Like, this is, he may be saying this stuff about paedophiles because what he was saying was kids can consent and stuff like that. At least some kids. And like, not all paedophiles are evil and stuff like that. The usual stuff that we now know they say, but back then it was like, what? And then he kept doing it and doing it and doing it. He disappeared for a while, come back, and then say it again. And then eventually, a few years later, while he's in his American home, he's arrested. And what was he trying to do? Solicit sexual favors from a young girl. I can't remember how old she was. Was she about 14 or younger, something like that? Yeah. So that confirmed to everybody it wasn't a troll. Even though anybody who could have told you, who listened to what he actually said, could tell you he wasn't trolling. We didn't think he was necessarily a pedo. We just thought he was misguided, because there are some people who support them and who are not pedos, who are misguided. A lot of them are on the left, but you know.
So he went to jail.
But then again, there are people who
and nothing of value was lost.
But then again, there are people who don't consider themselves paedophiles, who turn a blind eye and encourage women to be paedophiles towards boys. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does strike, and it's weird.
Nice.
It's so weird. Then I'll talk to a lot of atheists and stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, we need to abolish the Catholic Church."
I mean, as an Englishman, I don't mind that. But
okay, Jesus.
Papist yoke.
We're gonna go
Sorry,
down
Harry.
We're gonna.
No, we're not gonna go down there.
Okay, Church of England.
I'm an atheist, so you know, guys.
Yeah, they're like, well, they have like this where they protect pedophiles, and there's so many pedophiles in there. It's like, well, even per capita, even if you count it even per capita, it's like you have 100%. 100 times more likely chance of getting molested or sexually assaulted by a teacher than you do a Catholic priest. And I've had arguments with people who are like, well, but there's far more public schools than that. It's like, no, per capita, per capita. I have to keep reminding them, like, no, this is per capita, buddy. And it's just like, yeah, and it's just like it doesn't register, and then I'll go and check on them, like, whatever. Because sometimes I'm one of those people that, like, I'll get in an argument with someone, and I'll put a reminder, like, remind me in like 6 months. I put it in my calendar, so a little thing like, remind me to check this count and see what they're saying, and they're still going around spreading that stuff. It's like, oh my god, here we go. Yeah, and it's usually in public schools, it's usually female teachers with young boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when those get on the news, everybody goes like, "Well, look,
nice.
Kid, nice."
Who's the nonce then? That's probably worse than anything Nambler have ever said. That's societal-wide tolerance of nonces.
Nice.
I actually don't tell me you met him too. Oh god damn!
I've never met him. No. Never met him. I know of him, obviously, but but like this is what I don't get. Like, it's societal-wide tolerance of nonsense. I actually hate female paedophiles more than male paedophiles, because at the very least, male paedophiles get punished and are rightfully hated, but the female ones just get a free pass. And I remember years ago, there was a video that a female psychologist who was interviewed by somebody did. He described how they operate. They operate way worse than male ones. They're far more manipulative, and because they're under the radar, they can get away with it. They can. And the thing is, they can, if the boy is old enough, they can play it against him. They can say that he did something to them and he will get in trouble. And that's how a lot of them get groomed. And then when they want to speak out or they want to talk about it, they'll threaten the boy. Like, no, I'll tell them that you did something to me. And who are they going to believe? They're going to believe her. And like, the thing is, they still get punished. They still get punished. To be fair, the female nonces. I'm not saying that they don't. When they get caught, they get punished. But it's as if we should let them go. It's ridiculous because I don't get it. If you're against nonces, you're against all of them, like I am. And like, but the thing is, a lot of these people would rather. These people get more annoyed at Lolly, which is the whole Japanese cartoon thing, which even then that's not always pornographic. It's a complicated subject. They get more angry at that than female nonces who in real life are affecting boys and girls, more boys than girls, but they do affect girls too. Like, I don't look. The priority is real life shit that's going on. We can deal with the cartoons later, but come on, guys, because that's reared its ugly head recently. With did you hear about the Lotus Eaters? They talked about Loli and stuff like that. And it's like, no, we have an actual epidemic of nonces in schools, and they're all mostly women. Why aren't we talking about that?
Well, because Catholic, the problem in the Catholic Church sells more papers at the end of the day.
Yeah, and also
that's an easier fix.
Hate yeah, and the Loli thing gets more hate clicks, and to be fair, there's also, I mean, they also talk about the rape gangs and stuff as well, but like. We've got this problem that nobody talks about that needs to be addressed, and it's not always in schools. That it is in real life as well. But apparently, it's okay when women do it.
But I have noticed that there is a shift.
It's changing.
I mean,
it's changing. Yeah.
And it's not just a shift in that. I mean, like I've started to notice that, like, I remember when I was younger, and when those news things would come along, it was universal. Everyone was like, nice. I think South Park kind of got a lot of people kind of rethinking about that with that episode. And then, but the thing that's been really kind of interesting to watch is like the like everyone shifting against the kids stuff with the trans kid stuff. And that's been kind of white pill lately. Especially when you have like a publication like the New York Times, right? I believe right now they're still having demonstrations outside of the building.
Really?
Yeah, there's demonstrations going on outside of the building, demanding and calling them a right-wing newspaper because they hired
a former newspaper.
I think his name is David French, who's like a conservative writer, but he is very like the most milquetoast conservative. Like he kind of seems more like a Southern Democrat, than he is like like an actual Republican
racist?
or anything.
No, I'm joking.
Not that kind of, not the Dixiecrats. A little bit later, a little bit more socially conservative, but not completely. Kind of like more like a moderate. He's definitely a moderate.
Right.
But they hired him, but that's not really. I mean, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. What's been upsetting them is there has been 3 that they're citing, and I know there's a 4th one because it's an article that I've been sharing a lot. Articles about how it's probably not that it definitely is. It's probably not a good idea to give kids hormone blockers and surgeries and that sort of thing. And there's currently well, I don't know if it's currently, they might have wrapped it up. They get lazy, they get tired really quickly. Brittle bones, osteoporosis, and all that stuff from a lot of those medications. But they were protesting outside of the New York Times, and I'm starting to see like this kind of shift. But it in some ways it's good, in other ways it's bad. I remember there was that Oklahoma bill where they were trying to ban any kind of trans anything.
Yeah, they tried to do that in Scotland, the devolved parliament. It was 28. Yeah,
no, it was they were trying to ban it for anyone under the age of 26.
Sorry, I missed. I thought it was like a gender bill or something in Oklahoma.
No, the one that they passed was 18, but the one that was on the floor originally, and they modified it to be 18.
I think it should be 26. Honestly, maybe I think that's a good age.
I think that's probably the appropriate age that you need that you're at the right mental state for that. But if you're an adult, you should be able to. If you're 18, you should be able to drink. You should be able to smoke, and you should be able to.
Like we do over here.
Maybe 21. I get a lot of shit from people when I say like maybe the age of consent should be 21. But yeah, I mean, yeah, but like this is the thing, like in Scotland, in a devolved parliament, a lot of foreigners think they're in an independent country. They're not. It's a devolved parliament. Even my city where I live, my area is devolved Scotland
slightly. Yeah, well, Scotch. So the devolved parliament tried to enact a law that would give recognition to trans kids and stuff like that. It's just, the usual stuff that they want enacted in law, even though the current trend in Europe in general, well, the world really, is trans kids shouldn't be a thing, that we shouldn't be giving them puberty blockers and stuff like that. But Nicola Sturgeon thought the wisest course of action that will keep her in power, even though she doesn't need to do this because the SNP will always be voted for. They don't want independence, but they want the Gibbs, and they give the most Gibbs. The best thing for her parliament, for her party, is to enact this law, and it did pass because they're the majority. It was always going to, but then Westminster struck it down, which they have the power to do, because it's horrible, it's disgusting, because that's not where the wind is going, Nicola. And then a few weeks later, she's resigning. Like, even though Britain hasn't yet enacted laws against it, it will happen. Like the general culture is this should not be allowed, and I think the Tories understand that, and Labour understands it, even though they have a really loud screeching intersectional element. Keir Starmer's too much of a pragmatist to completely ignore the other side, which is don't do this. I think he would probably let the Tories have their way eventually when we do pass a law against it, because everywhere else has it. Even places you wouldn't think to pass laws against this have done, like Sweden. I think a lot of the Scandinavian countries have. The Netherlands definitely did at some point.
Yeah,
like, it's over.
Sweden?
It was over before they had a chance to get this off the ground. Like, nobody was going to agree to this. Nobody, except for the most radical, vaguely noncy types. You know what I mean?
I don't know. There's this a group that kind of satirizes this caucus. There's like this Libertarian Party caucus.
Oh, do you mean the classical liberal caucus?
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I'm not sure. There's like some other group that like makes fun of them, like there's a little satire account or whatever.
Yeah, it's not us, is it?
Yeah, but I guess the people that they were satirizing, the actual people, maybe I'm not sure. I don't know too much about it. But
you have to be really radical to think kids need to transition. Like, you're ruining their lives. You're turning, and not only this, that I know for a fact this was not that long ago. In the mid 2010s, they still had a very rigorous process to get people into transitioning stuff. Nowadays, they don't care. Oh yeah, go on.
Yeah,
like, that's dangerous. And if we allowed kids into that environment, they're going to be ruined, because they don't tell you nowadays that, oh, this side effect will happen. This is going to happen. This will happen. And a lot of the detransitioners have been complaining about that, how they weren't warned about it. Yep. And you're going to be seeing more of them as well. Detransitioners are going to be a big thing in the future.
No, they've been pouring out like crazy, and anytime they come out, they get attacked. They're brutally attacked. They're threatened, and then they'll people will come out and be like, "Oh, they were never trans." It's like, you know, it's weird. It's like they're perfectly fine in defending me, who looks like me. If I just started to be like, oh, I'm gonna start painting my nails and saying that, you know, my pronouns are she, her, they're like, oh yeah, he's trans and he's beautiful and trans lives matter and blah blah blah. But then the instant I'm like, take that stuff off my nails, be like, that was awful. They're like, oh, he was never trans.
Have you noticed, actually, you mentioned that, like, you know, a man painting his nails or a woman wearing men's clothes and stuff like that. Have you noticed they've been trying to co-opt that and corrupt it and change it into a trans thing? Like, so we can't have tomboys anymore.
Doing with drag.
You can't have effeminate men or just men who like to paint their nails. Like, I've known a man who paints them black. It's just a fashion thing for him. Like, it's just something he does. He's not trans. He's not a woman or anything like that. He's a man. A man who goes to the gym and stuff like that. Like, apparently that's trans for some of these people, and they do it on purpose, because if you're young enough and you're doing that, and you're impressionable, and you're maybe not as strong-minded as some people, they can and will convince you that you're trans. I can't believe they do that. It's called pink pilling, isn't it? That's what they call
I
it.
think so. Yeah.
Which is really a euphemism for grooming. Let's be honest, they're grooming these people, and they're ruining their lives. I don't get why. This is the one thing I can't fathom. I've never been able to understand, is why do they need to groom more of them? Like, what's the end goal with that? I don't understand. Is it to create a horribly amorphous society? I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't get it.
Well, I think what they're trying to claim is that there are that if we don't do this, or if we don't assist them, that they're going to end up committing suicide. But if you go through history, there's never been, even up until recently, there's never been like this big wave of youth killing themselves. Like
No.
we were never stepping over the bodies of all these kids killing themselves, which we would be doing if that was, if that was the case through all that time. And it was only recently that we started. But 2016 is when all this, like Travis Stock, that's when it started opening. And like where were all the kids dying in the streets, killing themselves because they weren't being, gender affirmed?
They tend to get over themselves.
Yeah, well, that's what happens because a lot of gender dysphoria. Most gender dysphoria affects kids, and it usually resolves itself in puberty. And most of the time they end up becoming gay or lesbian. But then you're stopping that process from beginning. Yeah, you're stopping that process.
Issues. Did you? I never had these issues. I never thought I was anything but a guy.
Yeah, same.
But they tried to make it out like it's something that we could all potentially go through. I do remember once there was a thing that came out. It's like sudden onset dysphoria, which I think affects adults. That was interesting, but that got shot down, didn't it?
Well, no, it didn't really get shot down. I mean, the paper's still there. It's still published. It's still being cited. There's still a lot of impact factor on that study. However, there was some corrections made, but it was more corrections in like the way they were they were phrasing things, not really any of the data that they were pointing out.
Because that's it. That is interesting. There are people who are just straight men one minute and then they're trans the next. And it's like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah,
like maybe there is something into that. But anyway,
I mean, there's a good chance that maybe like a lot of them were just like, well, now that it's okay to do it and it's like culturally accepted, and I'm seeing all these people on TV, and maybe it's time for them to like, all right, fine, I'll, whatever. That's entirely possible.
Maybe, yeah.
But if we would have seen like a lot of this stuff kind of, a lot of the stuff kind of develops early on. Like a lot of people that become trans, like they start showing like symptoms of gender dysphoria like really early on. It's when after puberty it still persists that you're like, okay, this is a thing.
Although I have noticed whenever I've read up on the history of it, like honestly, the trans activists try to claim that they're the most oppressed. But when you actually look at the history of it, because it only really goes as far back as the late 19th century, to be honest. I've never seen any ancient sources talking about this, to be fair. But when you go into the 20th century stuff, they're kind of just there. Nobody really, they're not even mentioned in the Holocaust and stuff, like gays are and stuff like that. Yeah. But trans people, no, nobody. They seem to be tolerated, and in fact, they seem to be. I mean, obviously, in some places you can't get, like in Britain in the 60s, you couldn't get the operation because it was illegal, but you could still go to Casablanca and get it done and then live a normal life. Like you weren't going to go to jail because you went over to some random place and did it. As crazy as that is, yeah, that you could get away with it. April Ashley was one of the first British trans women, and she did it in Casablanca because she couldn't get it done over here, and she wasn't arrested when she came back. In fact, she married like an aristocrat.
Yeah.
She died recently, actually. She died last year, I think. And nobody mentioned it in the trans side because she was older, from a different generation. They didn't like what she had to say about all this. I don't know. But it wasn't even front page news that one of the most iconic trans women died. I wonder why.
Yeah. I know that there's some cultures that kind of embrace that stuff. Or not really embrace
Iran.
It's
Iran.
Well, sort of. Well, no. We'll get into that. I mean, but like you have like Thailand, and you have like some like a couple of tribes in like the Native Americans where they would have like people who would either kind of present as women some of the time or all of the time, but they were never seen as like, oh, that's really a female. They would always look at them as like they were like a third thing, or they would view them as some sort of like elder. It really depends on the culture.
The Thai thing,
but they never.
They're not really considered trans, but they're not women either. They're just men, lady boys. That's what they call them, right?
Yeah, you'd be nice and call them she, but yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what they're referred to as lady boys. Even that's even
they call themselves that.
Yeah, it's the same in Philippines too. That's a big thing over there as well. Like a lot of the South Indo.
They're the only people honest about it.
Or whatever it's called, Indo-Pacific. Yeah.
East Asia,
or South Asia.
Oh yeah,
Asian.
Southeast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else have you? Should I have the bone to pick with you about me being conservative? Apparently,
Well, I called you a conservative libertarian. I mean, I think
I'm not
probably what I really
conservative.
meant to say. But I think a lot of the stuff that you end up talking about kind of falls onto that side, just because that's where
Yeah,
I think
because
this
a lot
that's
of them
probably
are
where
my
the discussion
friends.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I myself, I don't really consider myself to be a conservative. I'm very much in the Michael Malice school, which is the conservatism is progressivism driving the speed limit, and I am not a progressive.
Well, I mean, what I mean by
Mm.
conservative libertarians, I don't mean that they're conservative, big con. We should talk about that.
Yeah, let's go on.
But more like kind of more socially conservative libertarians. Like
I mean, the only thing I'm socially conservative on, really, if we want to talk about that, is tattoos. Can't stand them. That's it. I mean,
I love
yeah,
them.
sure.
I want my
I
girls
don't
covered in ink.
men as well. I think it looks weird on men too. But like I mean, yeah, I mean, promiscuity and stuff is kind of, it's not ideal, as it's not good or anything. But I don't preach. I don't tell people what they can and cannot do with their own bodies. I'm just like, do it, but when the consequences inevitably happen, don't come crying to me.
Yeah.
That's my
I've
take
warned
on it. Like, yeah, go have sex with hundreds of women, hundreds of men. It's going to come back to haunt you. You should probably have a bit of fun and then settle down, because eventually it's just going to make you empty and feel worthless, because it does, doesn't it, having too much
It does.
sex?
It does.
Yeah.
Coming from a certain
Yeah.
experience, it does.
Yeah. So, but again, I don't tell them not to. Just say, well, you're an adult, do what you want, but don't come crying to me. That's if that's conservative, then I don't know. That's conservative now, apparently.
Yeah.
So I'm not encouraging it. I'm just letting them fall for the. I'm not encouraging it. I'm simply saying consequences must happen.
So,
which, to be fair, in this culture, that consequences don't tend to happen as much. If you think about it, shame needs to come back, though. I do agree.
But I have like talked about this like briefly, because I remember like early on I used to talk about like, oh, I don't need a girlfriend, I could just get what I need and move along, and have friends and stuff like that. But then like it really does start to feel empty, like you, and there is like the psychological thing of like I meet a girl, we have our moment, and then they go away. Your brain, there's like a part of your brain that starts going like, I'll never be loved. Yeah, like they don't like you. That's why they leave. There's that kind of thing that kind of itches in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it's sad. So anyway, let's dunk on Big Con.
Yeah. So you did a video recently where you were talking about.
I was a Johnny Come Lately. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I mentioned. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on any of my because I haven't been live streaming since that's kind of stuff happening. But I've noticed that people have kind of been picking sides on this, and I'm kind of like, I think both of you guys are stupid. I think Nick Rekieta like has some really good points, and I think like the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro, I think they have some legitimate points too. I think they're both right, but I think at the end of the day, I think they're both being kind of shitty. So I mean, like at the end of the day, like, because Steven Crowder wasn't really upfront with all of the things that were going on with that contract, and at the same time, like they were putting things into that contract that's not good if your goal is to push your ideas forward, and then financially punishing your contractors for not falling in line with these rules. I think there should be some sort of middle ground. But at the same time, I mean, this is an offer. Like this is one of those, they have a cookie cutter contract that they give to everybody. And the idea is, okay, we're going to negotiate the terms of this contract. But to present it like, oh yeah, this is the final thing. It's not a good thing to even be in the initial contract, but at the same time, it's not set in stone. He made it seem like this was the offer, take it or leave it, and it never was. And he also didn't mention the money that they was being offered in relation to the fees, and I think that's kind of also important too. But what was your take on it?
I ignored the drama for the most part, because even though it was interesting and funny, I do love following the drama, but when I made that video, I thought that's immaterial. All this stuff about him versus the Daily Wire and stuff like that, like no, immaterial. The contract stuff, as bad as that is immaterial, because what Crowder may or may not have he may have accidentally done this, he may have done it on purpose, but what he's actually brought up is more important than that. Is Big Con. What is Big Con? It's the people who claim to be our thought leaders, claim to be the ones who represent us, like the Daily Wire, not the Blaze, actually, because it turns out they're probably all right, but the person suing them, people like Sydney Watson, they're the issues. These are the people who are the problem. These people who come in, become leaders who are accepted, and then lead us down this really stupid path, or lead us astray, and do everything they can to make sure we can't succeed. And that is something that Crowder touched on when he mentioned that Daily Wire were working with big tech. Why else were they tolerated on the platform? Why were they never demonetized and stuff like that? And that's what I was trying to get at the video. Like, he's opened a can of worms that must not be closed. Like, and I wanted people to think about seriously who they've been supporting for years and years and years, and ask them, have they really done anything for them? Have they done anything to advance the cause, the cause of freedom and liberty and stuff like that? And for most of these people, the answer is no. They've not done anything. And you have to ask, why are they so accepted even now? Why haven't they been hounded out and destroyed, or at the very least made it difficult to have their stuff released? Like, why is it that people like Sydney Watson, these Johnny-come-latelys, can come in, garner huge followings all of a sudden, based largely on their gender? Let's be honest. And their looks. And be tolerated, and when you criticize them, say, well, hang on, how did this person who was a feminist not too long ago suddenly become right-wing all of a sudden, and is now suing the Blaze TV or whatever they're called for I think it's for there was some employment thing as well, but also I think she accused them of harassment and stuff like that.
I think it was with her former co-host of that show.
And let's just say
Elijah something was his name.
Yeah, Elijah. Yeah, even though I think her accusations are a bit suspect, to say the least. But why are these people tolerated? They've done nothing. They've done nothing. If anything, they're dragging you down. They're the most milquetoast. Like, if they're not the most milquetoast people who are tolerated and don't do anything and just make sure that nothing is changed, so that they have something to complain about and you have something to complain about, so they can make money, which is what it is. That's what I think it is. I'm losing my train of thought. I need to get back on the train. Quick.
Candace Owens. People like Candace Owens.
Prime example.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, do these people really want change, or do they want the status quo so they can continue making money and you continue to be the serf that you are? And most of them are like that. And it's always been the case since the 60s, 50s, maybe. Why did Goldwater lose? He was a legit OG. He lost to Nixon. Nixon then pretends to be the most right-wing candidate he could possibly be in all his elections, and then he ended up doing the most progressive shit in the 70s. Like, come on, affirmative action is his baby, not Kennedy, not LBJ, him.
Yeah,
and Reagan wasn't exactly the most right-wing person either, or Thatcher even, to be honest. But that's another can of worms. But again, these people were at least legit, though. But in terms of the commentary out and stuff like that, like, these people don't have your best interests at heart, and then most of them never have done.
Yeah, there's a lot of criticism that I would love. I'd love to throw shade at Steven Crowder.
I don't particularly like him, but
no, I don't either.
Dislike him either,
But at least, given the stuff that I've seen, it seems like he actually does give a shit about the things that he talks about. Otherwise, he wouldn't be out there talking to college kids.
And he has been targeted. He's had his income on YouTube removed, and he's entirely reliant on Mud Club and stuff like that. Like, that's when you know he's legit. Like when he's entirely fan funded and stuff like that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But when you criticize these people when they're too popular, you get told, "Oh, you it's just infighting and stuff like that. Stop causing drama." When you've got a legit gripe against these people, I've been warning about this for years. Like, stop introducing these people into your movements just because they happen to be women, just because they happen to be this, that, and the other, and do it on merit. Like, we don't need, a lot of it is it depends. So if you're on the more moderate side of the spectrum, which is most people, the reason why they have people like Sydney Watson come in and they have someone like Candace Owens is because they don't want to look racist and sexist. Well, excuse me, we don't need to look like that because we've got Ayn Rand, we've got Thomas Sowell, we've got Larry Elder. I'm thinking of we've got who else have we got? Walter. The guy who died recently.
Well,
rest in peace.
We don't have him anymore, but I know
we don't have him anymore.
Yeah.
But
we don't have Ayn Rand either.
And the Brits, we have our own equivalents, and the French have their own equivalents. We don't need to prove that. We don't need these people to be there because they're.
What the fuck did you just fucking say about me, you little bitch?
You little bitch. Yes. Duh. We don't need these people to look good because we've got all these legends.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to prove anything. We don't need them.
Caitlyn Jenner was like a prime example. Like, oh look, we got it. They're literally tokens. They're literally.
Caitlyn was always right wing. To be fair.
Yeah, right? But they only really started putting a microphone in her face. Once she came out as trans, and it was like, okay, we have the see we're.
Although Caitlyn Jenner says stuff that angers everybody, which I don't mind.
Yeah. Buckle up, buckaroos. She's behind the mic.
I don't mind
and the wheel.
Jenner. I don't get the hate that Caitlyn Jenner gets.
No, I'm not hating. No. But the reason why they're really banking on is because it's just like, well, we're not anti-trans either. Look, we got.
And what happens? Like, you get people who take advantage of that. It could be either they're grifters and just want to make money, or they're infiltrators.
Yeah, but it's like, why? When you have someone like, Blair White, where you could just bring her on, and she seems like she gives a shit. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and then even in the smaller, more fringe extreme groups, that happens as well. They'll have somebody come in who's very clearly a bad apple. In fact, has a long history of being a bad apple. So the dissident right recently, they didn't realize that they've got a massive Duganist problem. If you know what Duganism is, guys, it's too complicated to get into, but it's basically
give us the
it's national Bolshevism, but with Russian imperialism tacked on as well. It's complicated, but
imagine communism plus Nazism in one big ball
and Russian imperialism. Yeah, so but they infiltrate the left and the right.
That's communism.
Yeah, they infiltrate the left and the right, but recently they've gotten into the right, and nobody noticed except for a few, but others have embraced it. And I'm like, well, they're not interested in a strong West. They want to utterly crush the West and create Eurasia, you fucking idiots. Which that's legitimately what Dugin wants. And what else? They've been allying a lot with pro-Russian types. And again, it's like, guys, these people don't have your best interests at heart. They don't care about the West. When they talk about the West in decline and stuff, they're not lamenting. They're not helping you. They want that to be weak. They want you to be weak because it helps their geopolitical goals, you idiots. Like you're being had. And it's the same. It's the same when they gush over a country that's apparently based like Russia. Like sometimes even China is considered a little bit based because of what they can do. And how they don't tolerate wokeism and stuff, even though they fund it over here using TikTok and stuff like that. But obviously they wouldn't have it in their own country because if they did, the youth would get distracted and they wouldn't have their army of workers, Yeah,
well, I mean, they do have TikTok there, but the algorithm doesn't let them see it.
Dollion. Yeah, they don't let them see it. Yeah, that's all on purpose. But they don't think about this stuff. They don't think, are we being infiltrated by these people? Who are these people? And some of these people do go on about how gatekeeping is necessary and stuff like that, but they don't practice what they preach.
Yeah.
So when I criticize somebody for being an obvious infiltrator or just a grifter, I'm attacked for it, and then when I'm inevitably proven right, oh, this person's gone off the rails. This person's exposed.
Yeah, but you say that about everybody, Mitch. You say that about everybody.
I don't say.
You say that about everybody. That's what I get when I'm like, no, dude, this Molyneux guy, he's a fraud. Don't.
Molyneux's a classic example.
Yeah,
he's still
and then he did it, and everybody was like, "Well, yeah, but you say that about everybody." And it's like, well, who have I been wrong about? It seems like I just keep hitting them all. Like,
I'm sure I've been wrong on some people.
Yeah,
I just recently found out that a guy I used to know, who I only, to be fair, the only reason I don't talk to this guy because he's a dick. But do you remember Oozily? British YouTuber, one of
No.
Sargon's inner circle. He's not anymore. I just
Was,
recently
was he
found...
like Discord spies? David
No,
Shitrap?
no. It's different. But he was the guy who first fell out with Kraut. He was one of the people who was attacked by Kraut
Now you
back in the
mentioned
day.
him.
I
He's
know,
coming.
but this is only in passing. He's not going to come. He won't come for this. But he's gone apparently full down. He's gone way down the white nationalist rabbit hole, and that's because we've got... I mean, it's a tiny minority, but they're parasites who won't go away, who are very good at what they do. We do have people who are small accounts, but influential accounts, who are white nationalists, who are do-goodists, who are Putinists, they are leftists, whatever you want to call them. And if they can stay one person down their path, they've achieved something.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been hanging out with those people, and lo and behold, look what's happened. Because I know he got blackpilled over something that happened recently, and that's put him down a spiral, and these people took advantage of it, and he is where he is now. And this is why I have a zero tolerance approach to these people. If I see them in my chat, if I see these people, on my channel, I don't ban them or block them. I just become hostile so they know not to be around me. You don't need to block or ban them. You can if you want. It's your space. You do what you want with it. It's your castle. I don't need to. I just need to bark really loud and they'll go.
Yeah, I started noticing
thing.
this. Yeah, I started noticing this. This was like pre, what are the alt-right, when the whole alt-right thing happened. I was
the
like, I already
token
know about this
racist,
stuff.
isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, when I first started on YouTube, I was mostly talking about the Zeitgeist movement and the Venus Project, because I had a friend who was going down that.
What?
Yeah, dude, like, like it's like not even like. Oh God, where's my Zeitgeist music at? Dude, like imagine going to the store and getting like free Cheetos, dude. Like it's like free, dude. Like you don't have to pay nothing. And then like, here you go. So I had a friend who was going down this rabbit hole of the Zeitgeist movement. So I got kind of
I had a friend who did that too,
busting it, and that's how I got started on YouTube. And when I did, I don't want to name names, but you'll probably know. I'll tell you off air.
I had a friend who told me to watch him. I watched the first two, and I was like, whatever.
Yeah, but there was like some libertarian guys who were like, "Oh, you're making libertarian content. Come hang out with us." And the guy who was trying to get me in, or who actually got me into the Skype group, you probably don't know him, but the people who were running the Skype group, I'll tell you off air later. Actually, you know what? I'll put it in the private chat.
Oh, okay. Here we go, guys. Apparently, I know them. At least used to. I don't know. Yeah, I had a friend who told me to watch it back in the day, and I remember thinking, "Oh, okay, the political stuff is."
There you go. So
the first one is that the guy who used to be alt-right or something?
Yeah. Well, no, he never used the term.
I don't know the other guy though, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, anyways, I'm pretty sure once I'll show you something and you'll be, oh, those guys. Okay. And they were in this group, and it was just constantly like just racial slurs, and I hate racial slurs and they're just over and over and over. And it was like, yeah, it was like early 4chan, but unironic. And it was like, what? And I ended up leaving, but they were like, it was very much kind of like, if you ever had like a Mormon come to your house and about Mormonism and all the stuff that they believe and the things that they tell you.
Jehovah's Witnesses over here, yeah.
Yeah, or Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. It's milk before meat, and they start giving you like little things here and there, like, oh, isn't it weird that like, that there's like, 13% of the population responsible for 50% of the crime. Like, isn't it weird how all the people who own media companies, they're all kind of wearing silly hats? Like they just start doing that sort of stuff, and then
isn't it weird
they start breaking you down. That's just. I love my Port Charlotte. Okay.
No, that was an Irish reference, because a lot of Wall Street. It's funny. This is actually true. A lot of Wall Street people who own Wall Street companies are Irish, or Irish descent, shall we say? They're not real Irish people. They're Irish Americans.
Yeah, I'm Irish American.
Well, I'm probably more Irish than you.
Yeah, but I've noticed that what they do is they find new YouTube creators or
Mm,
content creators who are kind of more on the right leaning spectrum, sometimes
mm,
left,
hmm
who may be a little bit more red pilled lefty people, and they just started like they just find them and they start creeping into their DMs and be
mm,
like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going? Let me be your
mm,
friend. Let me hang out in your Discord group." Blah, blah, blah. Or well, this was pre Discord. This was Skype era.
mm.
And they actively recruit. And
Right.
and after that whole thing happened with me, and I ended up leaving and stopped talking to all of those people. Um, I found out like Jeffrey Tucker did this article. It was it was right when he started going after the alt right. He was recalling a time that he got invited to this dinner by
Mm.
this really gorgeous older lady. Uh, he said he was sort of like gilfish. I don't think he used the term, but that's what
MILF.
he was getting at. More gilfy because he was a
Oh,
little bit older
guilty, eh?
when this
Mm,
happened. Yeah,
mm,
and it was supposed to be this dinner. Like, oh, no, I want to talk politics. I want to hear what you have to say. And during this course of the conversation, she kept leaning more into like, oh, isn't but Hitler was a good guy, right? You think Hitler was a good guy, and it was just like this was obviously an attempt to like bait
mm,
him into joining like all of these kind of groups and stuff, and he saw it for what it was, and I was like, holy shit,
mm,
this is sort of what's happening. Only they're not using hot chicks.
mm.
Maybe
They
that's
do
the
use
other
chicks,
tactic.
though.
Yeah, they do use chicks, but not they didn't with me.
Oh, they tend to use a
They
lot
were
of
just
them are
trying to use
trained.
like yeah. So it's amazing. Like a lot of people don't know that, but a lot of
Mm. Again, it could
trans
be anything. It
people,
could be.
yeah.
It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be lefties, and that's probably how we can go in. We go and talk about him. How Spinosaurus Kin, aka David Sherratt, aka Discord Spies, became a commie.
Oh,
If you
he's a
want,
commie now?
yeah, he's been a commie for ages. Yeah, yeah.
An
Yeah,
idiot.
ever since he fell out with me and all the others, yeah, he's been on a downward spiral towards the left. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's only gotten worse. He hasn't gotten better. But like,
that's
so what did you ask
it's
about
never
him?
really unfortunate. Well, I was just wondering, like, because I know you had some history with them. Like, what was
Mm.
that all about?
So
Because
it was
I
one.
was like the only thing that like I remember when I first heard about him was through that article where he was bragging about being an incel,
Yeah, yeah. Well, it wasn't an
and I was like,
incel. He wasn't an incel. He was voluntarily celibate.
Volcel, yeah, whatever.
Well, that wasn't even a thing. It was
I,
MGTOW. He was a MGTOW, but he hadn't even had like a relationship at that point. He was like 18, 19,
he
something
was
like that.
incel, but he was pretend like, oh, I want to do this. This is this is voluntary.
I wouldn't even call him an incel because he had the capability to get girlfriends, even if it was mostly online. He had the he wasn't totally inept at that. Although he had loads of failures that went public. But anyway, we'll get to them. So I
Lord
met him
Sutter.
way before that. I met him way before those articles came out. And this was when I was just starting. I think he may have started just before me, but me and Megan started at pretty much exactly the same time, and we
Mhm.
got into Bane 666 AU's Skype group, which was called the B List, and that was so he could, get in contact with up and coming creators and stuff like that, and talk to us and stuff like that. And he was a men's rights activist at the time, Spino, and actually, he was one of the few. Most of us weren't. I wasn't really. I've always been more of an advocate. An activist actually goes out there and does stuff. I'm more the one who highlights the issues so that they can do their jobs better. That's how I've always considered
More
myself to be.
gooder.
Well, they're better. They're good. They're more gooder than me because they're
Okay.
out there in the field.
But I
I'm
just wanted
just
to correct
making
your
sure that
grammar.
yeah. Oh,
It's
oh, of
it's more
course.
gooder.
It's more
So they can
gooder.
be the goodest.
They can be the goodest, and I can
Most
be
goodest.
slightly good, slightly gooder. So like he was one of the few. There wasn't really that many. So like eventually he started to stop being a MGTOW because I think he probably, because he was young as well, he probably realized, well, I do need to have a relationship or something like that. And
Mhm.
then obviously that that student tab article had happened where he was talking about, a legit issue which has only gotten worse. False rape accusations, false harassment accusations, stuff like that. He was worried about. He was genuinely worried about that, especially since he was in a university where at one point they tried to do a struggle session with him, like in his like dorm. This is something that genuinely happened, and I can't believe even now after that he still went on their side after what they did to him. So they got wind of what he believed in. I think they must have read the article. They must have seen his videos. And these people in this dorm that he was in tried to have an intervention with him and tried to bully him into submission. And he didn't back down. He didn't back down. He stood his ground and he left. He managed to get a new place. And that must have affected him way more than I initially thought. And then he met this girl.
Apparently, we lost the Odyssey stream. Sorry about that. If you're,
oh dear.
So sorry about that.
That Odyssey's over.
Well, they're gonna get the full replay. That's gonna come
they
off
will.
YouTube,
Yeah.
So,
but like, so he met this girl, this Syrian girl, called Dee, and nobody knew what she looked like. Apparently, only he did, and she had a lot of red flags. So this was what me and my friend Greg, who's still my friend to this day, he still watches my stuff as well. This is what we noticed, and maybe a few others. She was a little bit of a feminist. She was hiding it. She was trying to hide it, but we noticed because sometimes her online activity would show who she's been liking and following and stuff, and it was some feminist accounts, some big ones. And obviously, some things would slip through the cracks with her Twitter, with stuff she would say on Twitter. And it all came to a head where he tried to get her out of Syria or something like. This is before the war, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Must have been. Oh, maybe it was during the war. No, it was during the war. Sorry, yeah, the war was during this time. But like, she was not in a place where she was in any like physical danger. It was more a family. She always claimed that her family was so conservatively Muslim and horrible that if they found out that she was talking to him and had an relationship, she'd be punished severely. She could possibly die, honor killings, all that stuff, right? We had no idea. We only had her word for this. And we never had like one-to-one conversations with her ourselves, really, where and seeing her actual face to determine if she was telling the truth or not. Only he did, and I still to this day don't know what she looks like. And he did a fundraising campaign for her, and he managed to raise £10,000 to get her out. But his mum, and I know he gets a lot of stick for his mum, and to be fair, she is quite funny. She didn't trust this girl, so she didn't. So when the money arrived, she blocked it and said, "No, I don't trust this girl. I don't know who she is, I don't know or who they are. Let's be honest. I don't trust this. We're not doing this." And so I don't think he was transparent about it. He didn't tell us anything about this. So we thought she took the money and ran, or he took the money and ran. And then, but this is later. And then eventually he starts turning more and more left. But this is right after he did his most radically anti-feminist video where he asked the question, "Are they terrorists?" Yes, some of them are. Yeah, but
demonetized. I was never. I wasn't.
Well,
monetized
some of them are.
anyway.
Yeah, some of them were, especially in the 70s. But anyway, after that, he went more and more left and started engaging in infighting with a lot of MGTOWs. Some of them deserved criticism, but in hindsight, a lot of them didn't. And I foolishly took his side more as a friend rather than necessarily disagreeing with everything that they said. I did disagree with a lot of what they had to say. But then I realised he'd gone too far. And I think I publicly called him out, but he hadn't seen what I was saying on the stream. Then we had an argument. I brought him on and engaged in an argument with him, and then that was it. The cat was out the bag, and then he went on his spiral, and then eventually the shit with Sargon happened. For those of you who don't remember, there was a Sargon parody account that was on Twitter for a while, and it was just making really stupid stuff about him. It wasn't really funny, and he ignored it for a while, but then we found out who ran it. It was David. He ran it. And he didn't tell Carl about it. He didn't tell me or anybody about that. I can't remember if that was before or after the fallout I had with him. It's all a bit mixed up now. But it doesn't matter what order it's in. It still points to his general decline and fall. And he didn't understand what the problem was at first. But it's like, you're doing this parody account. You're still apparently friends with him in public. Yet you're doing this thing, mocking him and attacking him. And it's not a mutually agreed upon joke, but you know what I mean. Like, it's not something he knows about and doesn't care and doesn't mind. Like, I'm sure if he said, "Look, I'm going to make a parody account about you," is that okay? Carl wouldn't have minded. Well, because it was behind his back and was aiding his enemies, it was like, well, shit, you just betrayed him a little bit, personally, maybe not politically, but it was more of a personal betrayal. And then he started. Obviously, he didn't really get involved with Kraut. His name was mentioned, and they had a conversation. But David was like, "Oh, we don't do the doxing here," or something like that. And then he disappeared for a while. I'm probably missing some important stuff that other people that I know have an encyclopedic knowledge about.
I think this was also about the time that he started going after. Was it Michelle Caitlin?
Yeah. He did have.
Who's the detransitioner now?
Is she now? Interesting. Interesting. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, he now.
So what's it called, Michael?
Yeah, where he was making like fake chat logs of him. Yeah, sorry, Phobes. you gotta go to the shithole country that is YouTube. He made screenshots trying to insinuate that Michelle was a pedophile and was hitting on like 12-year-olds and stuff like that. Then what was the other one? He got caught a few times trying to make and the whole Pate Ben thing, and he just kind of disappeared after that. I remember he tried to come back again. I think that's what Discord Spies, that name came from.
Tried to come back.
Yeah.
And when he was Discord Spies, he went to America to meet this girl who used to be alt-right. And then when
you're talking about Lauren Southern?
No. Oh, that's a whole. I forgot about that. Yeah. No, that's totally different. She's actually much younger than people think she is. He's not that much younger than her. I'm way older than her, and I'm 30 this year. Do you know that?
I'm 40. I turned 40 last year.
Oh yeah, we're 10 years apart, aren't we?
Yeah.
But so we're growing old together, guys.
Yeah.
So like he's only 2 years younger than her, and I'm 2 years older than her. Right? Let me look this up. Sorry, I need to have a look at her age. She looked way older. She's always looked older than she actually is. Her older sibling looks younger. At least used to. 27. Bloody hell, she's 3 years younger than me, and so he must be 4 years younger than me. Then yeah. So like their age difference isn't actually that much. So he had a chance, in theory. But obviously, being who he is, even back then, he never had a chance. And we used to make fun of him all the time about that. What he used to do, and this was still when we used Skype groups. We didn't have Discord. Or Discord was just about to come about. He used to get alerts for when she was in the chat. She was in the group. Bane666 knew her. But she was rarely in it because she was busy being a big YouTuber and stuff, right? And political activist. And whenever she was in, he'd get like an alert which would come up as like a quote or something, if I remember correctly, like a reply quote. It's kind of creepy when you think about it in hindsight. He managed to code this into Skype. And when we found out about it, we used to abuse it. So you could type in Lauren Southern or Southern, and his profile would automatically create like a reply to that. So we used to abuse it and make fun of him all the time about that. But apart from that, we did genuinely want the best for him and thought, go for it. If you think you can get with her, do it. And he did used to talk to her, but I think she only ever saw him as a friend. And
friend zoned.
Yeah, he may or may not be bitter about that. He might not be. I don't know. People would have to ask him. But anyway, this Antifa girl that he tried to get with in America, oh god, that was more embarrassing than the Lauren Southern thing. At the very least, I think she just said, look, I'd rather be friends and leave it at that. It was probably a lot of stuff happened in the background. This one happened in public, and his DMs were leaked. So he went to America to visit this girl to try and get with her, and she rebuffed him. And then in the comments, he was trying to in the messages he was trying to say, oh, I just want to be with you, just want to touch you or something like that. It's something silly and creepy like that. Actually, not even creepy. It was just pathetic. And she was like, no, I just see you as a friend or something like that. No, stop, or something like that. Some of the people who I know will have the encyclopedic knowledge about that and tell me exactly what they said. But that was hilarious. But at the same time, I felt sorry for him. He's still on that quest to get his waifu.
Yeah.
But I still to this day don't know what happened to Dee, the so-called Syrian girl. They split up and she completely disappeared off the face of the internet. There's no trace of her anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it was her fault. She was clearly an infiltrator, and she was specifically after him. Because she never went after the rest of us. She never tried to convert me. She never tried to
or maybe she did, just under a different account.
But then, yeah, maybe. But then again, he wasn't the only person to go that route. So Griffiths, the Dutch girl, if you remember her, she went more left. Feminism is for nobody, if you remember him, the kid.
No.
He's no longer with us, unfortunately. He died of cancer.
See, I didn't follow a lot of the because I didn't.
Well,
follow
these are people I knew. Yeah, he went left, but he died of cancer, unfortunately. But I did get a chance to wish him good luck in his battle before he died. So, yeah, he was like 23, 24, yeah, and I met him when he was 16. Yeah.
So when the whole like Atheism Plus came along, I was just like, what is the opposite of this? I need to see the opposite of this. And
well, technically the opposite is the what they called the slime pit, or they used to be called the slime pit.
Yeah,
the atheists who ran away from that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't. I remember the slime pit, and I remember looking at that, going like, this is like 4chan but serious, and I don't know about all this. So I'd never really looked into it too deep. I just on the surface, it just rubbed me the wrong way. But what it was there was a MRA video, and I was like, okay, the MRAs, they seem to be like the counterbalance to this thing, right? And I ended up like sharing this video on Facebook, and it was before I finished watching the video that I shared it.
Who was
and
it?
In the middle,
of interest?
It wasn't anybody talking. It was like this. It was like a kind of like pseudo YouTube documentary type thing where they just take clips of things. And at one point they were talking about women hitting men and how it's perfectly okay for women to hit men, but not the other way around. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's a double standard that, they don't ever talk about. But the solution was we should just hit women every time they hit us back or hit us. And I was like, whoa, oh,
wait,
okay.
Like
I'm now skeptical of everybody.
So if she hits you, you hit back in self-defense.
Yeah, you punch her. And so they were showing videos
in the world. I don't know.
But the videos that they were showing was like a girl would like slap a guy and he would just like knock her cold out.
Yeah, that's bad optics, bad propaganda.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'm immediately
you can tell
skeptical
that
of everybody
Luchin
now.
hadn't probably you can tell Luchin from Freedom Alternative hadn't been involved with that, because he would have come up with something way better. He is a legit propagandist, a right-wing one. Which we do need.
This was early
we need
on.
People
really
like that.
early on.
Oh, right, yeah. So he probably wasn't around doing that stuff. Oh, no, he was, but maybe not in public. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should look up Freedom Alternative. He's pretty good. I always chill him.
But let's talk about your boy Ethan.
My boy Ethan Ralph, the goat.
Which I got blocked.
I know probably less than you do, to be fair, about what's been going on. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't really know what's been going on with him recently, but I know that you were like one of the first people to have a falling out with him.
Yeah, I can tell you about that. So I wasn't.
Which, by the way, just so everybody knows, like Ethan Ralph was the guy who ran the Kill Stream, very popular YouTube stream. The Ralph Retort, aka the Kill Stream. And I remember a lot of people were listening to that, and I remember listening to it and going like, I hate the host. Like everybody else, I kind of like even if I disagree with them, and I disagree with a lot of like, yeah, but it always had people on like like the quickening, the quartering, excuse me,
quickening. Doesn't he?
Yeah,
I've never really liked him.
No, but I mean, like it had people on who were kind of interesting, and they had conversations that I found interesting, even though I didn't necessarily agree with them, like Jim. And the whole Monday Matt thing happened there, and so, but I remember like listening to it, and I like like the other two guys that were on, like Gator and what the fuck was.
Do you remember that when? Do you remember when they exposed Matt by?
Yeah, that was a great show. I mean, I must have listened to that episode like 100 times.
Matt, no. Yeah, so I can tell you about how it happened to me and how I was right and everybody else was wrong.
Well, I wasn't wrong. I had mixed feelings, and when I found out his history and how he got famous,
I'm being a dick.
I was like, Yeah, he was like Gamergate, and then he ended up like punched
Yeah.
a cop and went to jail, and that was
Yeah,
his claim
I
to
can tell
fame.
you what happened before that. So Gamergate happened, right? And he was one of the first voices to talk about it. He wasn't the first.
Yeah,
It
one
was
of.
everybody just came together, and I was still. And then obviously, because it's a big movement, the cliques develop, right? Naturally, right? And
Mhm.
factions and stuff like that. And he always hated this particular person called Cult of Vivian and her clique. I'd always read his articles attacking her, and I'm like, why are you attacking her? Like, she may be a bit of a dick. I eventually will talk to her, and she's not. She's just normal. um, maybe she could get a bit catty, but whatever. In hindsight, but like, he would always attack not just the anti-Gamergate side, but even people on his own side, because he saw them as trying to use the movement for their own gain. But he never had any evidence to back that up. Like, there's no evidence the Cult of Vivian ever was ever insincere, and there was other people he didn't like as well, and eventually it all came to a head where he started hanging out with these people called the Billy Wagner crew, I think they were called. And these were people who were made up of guys called, the two that I remember most specifically and vividly was Wild Goose and, oh, what's this guy part? I don't think this guy was part of it, but he was still hanging out with them. Someone called the Batman or something, but there's now like another person called the Batman on Twitter who's not the same person. They were really annoying people who were trolls. And what they would do, at least Wild Goose, who was a member of this crew back in the day, they doxed him. Actually, the first people who doxed him were them. And then Ralph has always been a retard.
Yeah, he
so
is.
so like he would, even though they doxed him, he became
What are you,
their friend.
retarded? So
What do you
he,
mean?
I know you're not retarded, but what are you, Down syndrome?
Well, somehow they end up making friends with him after this. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't make friends with people who dox me.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. And then they were influencing him to do stuff and write articles, and some of the people who wrote for him as well. So it all came to a head when this girl called Lily Feng, who was part of the movement, one of the people that he didn't like, killed herself. She threw herself in front of a train, if I remember correctly, and she had and her fiance was part of the movement too, and obviously he was devastated and stuff like that. And they convinced Ralph. Well, maybe not Ralph. They started sending the fiance pictures of train victims, train suicide victims and stuff like that. They used to call it grave trolling, graveyarding, something like that. Terrible. You shouldn't be doing that when somebody's just died to them. It's not wrong, and obviously they weren't. It turns out they were the people who were using Gamergate for their own amusement. But I don't know if he ever noticed that. And they convinced him. Obviously, they got pushback against this from Vivian and loads of other people who probably didn't really know him, and so they convinced him to write an defending them because it's free speech, man. They should be able to troll people who have lost loved ones, and like, yeah, sure, they may be allowed to do that, but then you're also saying they should be free from consequences. Nope, they should be trolled into oblivion, personally. But yeah, he was defending their behavior because they convinced him to do so. I know this now in hindsight that they convinced him to do most of this, but at the time I was thinking, why the hell is he doing this? Why are they doing this? What? This is indefensible. And then I caught wind of all this was happening and investigated it. I asked Ralph what went on. I asked Vivian what went on. I asked all these people, and eventually I realized that Ralph was in the wrong. And then there was another thing that happened. There was a woman she's like a disabled woman. She's still actually around, called Shannon. She wrote a really stupid article attacking suicide victims as cowards. And this was to defend Ralph and these people. It turned out she DM'd me not long after it all subsided, saying that she wrote it mainly because she'd lost somebody to suicide and was venting. I mean, it doesn't excuse what she wrote, but it explains what she did. And then there's this whole back and forth that happened. He felt betrayed by me and stuff like that, and because I exposed it all utterly that this guy's a fucking idiot. But then nothing happened after that. Like, he just seemed to get bigger and bigger and more popular and popular. And I'm like, this happened. Like those people, the people who used to be part of the Billy Wagner crew and stuff like that, they all had long left his circle when he started doing the kill stream and stuff. And he was friends with Ricata Law and stuff like that. And I kept saying to people, look, he's eventually going to betray them. He betrayed
He
all his
did.
other friends. He betrayed all his other friends in Gamergate
Gator.
long before them.
Yep.
Yeah, there were other
Gator,
people.
Nick Ricata, everybody.
Yeah, there were other people as well, but I can't remember the names during Gamergate that he also betrayed. Well, yeah, it would have been Carl and stuff like that. And yeah, because after all that happened, there was a split in the movement. All those people who defended Ralph and stuff, it was a very small minority. They ended up going to 4chan or some other place, and they created a splinter group called GG Revolt. They said that they were the true GGers who were going to fight for ethics and stuff, yet they got nothing done. It was the normal Gamergate people that got all those meetings about with journalists and stuff. You know all those meetups and the conferences about game ethics in games journalism and stuff. That was actually really impressive that they managed to do. And then there was one that had like a bomb threat, a legit bomb threat, called in. If you remember, do you remember that?
No, I didn't follow Gamergate too much. Like I had some issues with Gamergate, but it was mostly so a lot of the tactics they were doing and stuff. Hi, Meffy.
Well, I think a lot of those tactics were quite smart, like going for the advertisers and stuff.
No, I mean like that stuff was fine, but I mean it was really wasn't so much like what a lot of the like the sane people were doing, like the more like visual people that were there. It was the people that were kind of globbing on and no one was saying anything about it and doing the shit that was getting people like Anita Sarkeesian famous. And it was like, stop fucking with her.
I've read
that's the only reason why she's famous, because you fucked with her. Like no one gave a shit about feminine frequency until everyone fucked with her.
She's got even more influence now behind the scenes, not being popular than she ever did. Oh, Method, yeah. I actually think she's more of a pernicious influence now. But anyway, so Ralph had betrayed all these people in Gamergate, yet still became massively successful. To this day, I still don't know how he has the ability to get all these really famous people onto his show and talk to and stuff like
it doesn't seem like he's been able to do that now. I think he betrayed everybody, and everybody knows that.
Yeah, he's burnt all his bridges. And but I told them all. At least I would tell people who I spoke to, like, the guy is a fraud. He's a loose cannon. He's crazy. He's going to burn all his bridges. These people will all be betrayed at some point, and lo and behold, it happened. And I don't feel sorry for Nick Ricata, unfortunately, even though I don't mind him. Like, well, you chose to be his friend. Live with the consequences.
Yeah, he knew. Yeah, he knew. But it was weird that we were like mutual followers on Twitter for a while, and then when was it? I think it was when we got beat up, and the first time he got beat up, no, the second time he got beat up in Prague. I started sharing a bunch of memes of him getting punched. My favorite one was the my favorite one was the
beat him up.
It was the one where he was on the ground getting punched in the face, and they took that still image of the video. Yeah, they took the image of the still video and made it. Yeah, vulgar display of power pit by Pantera, and I was like, that is the greatest thing ever.
It was funny. Like, this is the thing I have mixed feelings about is the fight he had, which is really more of a beat up. Let's be honest, he got beat up. He didn't really have a chance. They stalked him. Let's be honest. There's no bones about it. They went after him. They went to Lisbon. It was in Portugal, not Prague. They went to Lisbon to beat him up. That was Cognitive Thought's only goal. I don't think Cognitive laid a finger on him. He might have done a little bit, but him and his mate, they went there to fuck with him. They said it's on record. Ralph is right, but it's still funny to see him get beat up though, because I don't like him.
I still think my favorite moment was he got beat up by a couple of bronies.
I've met him.
With the bronies?
No.
Oh, Cognitive. Okay.
Yeah, because we're from the same city. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So wait, you actually knew
he betrayed me, Cog, as well. Actually.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I did not know that you were like real life homies with Dick, Richard.
I'm not real life homies. No, nothing like that.
Okay.
We weren't even homies. It was an alliance that mutually benefited us, and it was the right and moral thing to do. So what happened was, do you remember Jennifer McDermott and
Jenny McDermott? Yeah. She threatened to dox me by telling everybody I lived in Summerlin, and I was like,
Do it.
It's in my profile that I'm from Vegas. Like, what?
Yeah, she
What
was
is wrong with you?
still is.
Yeah, she was a
but
nut job.
she's a turf, I think, you know.
Oh, she is now. Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
more reason not to side with them. But anyway, so obviously he's a lefty. I know you two are friends, aren't you? Are you still friends?
I haven't talked to him in a minute. But every once in a while, I'll notice that he's live streaming, and it's hard to follow his channels because he keeps getting banned. And so he keeps moving around YouTube channels.
He's literally a lefty. Like, what could he possibly be doing that's getting him banned?
I don't know, and I always kind of use him as because when people say like, oh yeah, only left righties get banned, I'm like, well, what about Dick Coughlin? And Dick Coughlin's not like, you know, like he's not like a nosball, or he doesn't say things that are like edgy or anything. He doesn't. He's like, he hits all of the
yeah.
He hits all, like, you know, I wouldn't say he's like a hardcore feminist, but he definitely does have feminist leanings. He calls himself a feminist, but when you get him to talk about it, he's like, well, I just think women and men should be equal, and if that's the definition of that, then that's me. And he's not a big fan of, you know, MRAs and men's rights stuff. He's not.
Yeah, but he was sure grateful for their help. But anyway,
yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not left. He's not right wing at all. He's very much like a libertarian socialist, and it's like, this is hitting all the check boxes that you would expect YouTube to be like, oh no, he's fine, leave him alone.
Maybe it's because of his history.
Probably, yeah.
They know what he's been up to in the past. But basically, what happened was he was involved with these people, and as we all know, as we've all been there, when you're in a clique, when you're in a group or community, and you get to know people of the opposite sex, stuff happens online. We've all been there. We've all had relationships with people. I can't think of any other word to call it. He never said anything that was that bad. So basically, what happened was JJ Talks made this big video say, "Oh, we've got problems in the SUW movement or something like that. Like, we've got men harassing women, sexually harassing them." And she called out Dick Coughlin for doing that. And what later and obviously he defended himself. I was watching from the sidelines, curious what is going on here, and it turned out it was a big nothing burger. Like, she did this purely to spite these people, just to attack them, ruin them. Probably what we would now call cancel culture. She wanted to
Wait, you said JJ Talks? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
she said, I remember this. I remember this whole thing. I remember the.
Yeah, that's how
it was the dick pics.
I met him. Yeah, the dick pics. Yeah.
Yeah, but so his name is Richard the Dick Coughlin. She alleged that he was sending him unsolicited dick pics.
I don't think
he asked for the receipts. When people were asking for the receipts, she was like, "Oh no, he sent pictures of his face, and his name is Dick." That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, and then there were other women who jumped on board to attack him as well. And the worst that they could, I think, Christiosity may have been one. I can't remember. There was a woman. So a picture did come out. He was in his boxers. He was trying to look sexy, but that's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not appropriate, but it's not harassment. He wasn't. And as far as we could tell, it was all consensual. They weren't complaining at the time.
But also, Dick also sends like random pictures. Like, if you're ever friends with him, he would send like random pictures to you, and it's not to be like sexual. It'll just be like him being goofy, and he never wears a shirt. So it's entirely possible that he was just being goofy and doing that kind of thing, because that's what he does, and he does it to everybody. He did it to fucking like a fat bald fuck like me, and I know he's not trying to get in my pants. So I mean, it's like that's just what he does.
And the thing is, there were people who weren't feminists who were on the opposite side, who were friends with JJ Talks, who I was friends with, not anymore because they're horrible scumbags, who went against him. So it was like this whole weird sort of Game of Thrones entangled mess of a drama. But ultimately, the people on the right side, which is those defending Dick, won, because they couldn't. We saved him. We saved his channel. He I remember him saying, "I'm really grateful for what he did, mate. Thank you." I was like, "Oh, don't worry about it." But then he ruined all that goodwill by going after Carl and other people on the right, doing very similar tactics to what happened to him. So there's something that
I remember the start of it.
I lost my respect for him. So
yeah, I remember. I didn't see how it evolved.
Didn't he? I remember at one point, I'm like, "Mate, what are you doing?"
Wait,
Tommy Robinson's
house?
Yeah, I think he went to Tommy Robinson's house, somebody's house. Yeah, to threaten him, or at least to troll him, which looked threatening. Yeah, I remember that happening. That's stupid. What is he doing?
Yeah. I don't know. Like he seems to like. I mean, he's always been, from my understanding, he's always been like a good guy, even though I completely disagree with a lot of his stuff. And early on, I remember he was actually like, he actually was like a fan of my. He was like a subscriber of mine. He was a fan of my content. And at one point, I didn't know he was just subscribed to me and was watching and liking my comment stuff, but he wasn't commenting, so I didn't know. And then out of nowhere, I remember doing a live stream. It was like late at night. I was still at like one. It was like the first apartment that I was started to do like live streaming at in Vegas. And he was like, "Hey, do you mind if I hop on?" I was like, "Dick Coughlin, what's to hop on my channel?" Okay, sure. But we ended up chatting for a bit. We ended up becoming friends. But he always seemed like he was a good natured guy, even though I disagreed with a lot of his stuff. I remember we used to have conversations about it. But he is definitely wrong, and I will fight him to the death. Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
It is a Christmas movie.
We're not going to get into it because it's not the holiday season.
But
every time I see him stream, every time I notice that he's streaming somewhere, if I stumble across one of those things and I see he's streaming, I'll pop in and be like, "Door hard," which is like a hardcore inside baseball joke. But anyways,
okay,
yeah, that's an inside joke. I'll explain it to you. So where can people find you?
You can find me on the MITCH channel. In fact, I will send you the link if you've not already.
Well, it's already in the description.
Yeah, find it.
I'm giving you an opportunity to play it.
I am planning on making a video this week. I couldn't do it last week because I was tired, and then I had to go in on the day I was going to record it to work. I was going to talk about not really Sydney Watson herself. Again, I was going to use the drama around her to talk about, like we mentioned today about infiltrators and stuff, and how you need to be on your guard. One person I was talking to last night said it's because we've got a battered wife syndrome on the right.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the right's problem right now is that they're trying to achieve progressive ends by conservative means. So like they're trying to be like, they're never coming at it like poverty is not going to be much of a thing if people are allowed to do what they want. Instead, they go like, "Oh no, like look, like we can do charity and stuff, and that'll be like exactly the same as as the social welfare programs, and we can achieve diversity just not by forcing it down each other. It's like, look, we got a trans person, look, we got a black lady, look, we got a Jewish guy, like look, we can be just as diverse as you."
Even though we've always had Jewish people.
Yeah. It's like, come on, like don't shit in my mouth and call it a Sunday. Say what you actually believe, or don't try to pretend that you're the left, but just we have a better way of doing the left stuff. Because that was. I'm not going to get into that.
It's been open now by Crowder, so people can ignore it if they want, but ultimately they'll have to make a decision about that. Other than that, I've been trying to think of ways to sort out the mess in my own country, which is why I've not really been talking about American politics for a very long time, unless I'm asked about it. It's something that impacts the world. And recently, I know that this is a video I've been wanting to make for ages. I just can't get around to it. There's a video. The census came out, and it was talking about how a lot of, even my city, surprisingly, I didn't realize it. I thought it was mostly tourists. I'm not gonna lie. My city is now no longer majority white British or something like that, and that black pilled a lot of people. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. You have to address it now. And how do we address it? And these people were just choosing to moan and groan and say, "Oh, we're doomed," or coming up with extreme solutions or just what have you. And I thought, well, hang on, the solution's really simple, and it boils down to who we put into Westminster. Really, if you want to see the change you want to see, elect the people that you want to see in there. And I don't just mean whoever they put up as a candidate. I do think, if I remember correctly, if you're part of a political party in your local area, you can vote for who will be a candidate, not just voting for them. Anyone can vote for a candidate if they're on the electoral register. But I mean, you can actually have a say if you are a card carrying paying member. So I was thinking, more British people need to get into that, because I know in America you can do that. You have your primary system. We don't have primaries, but I know there's something similar, because I think I remember somebody asked me to run for.
Maybe you should figure that out and then make a video about it.
Yeah, I'll have to look. I've been planning on doing that, and I know if more people bothered to do stuff like that and get involved in that particular thing, we'll have better politicians. They don't have to do it themselves, but just find the people who represent us best and put them in. Obviously, they'll be in the backbenches before they make it to the front, but if we have loads of our people in the back causing havoc and revolts in whichever party, that's only good. It's not bad. I mean, it might mean that the parliament becomes a stalemate, but eventually, if the best case scenario happens, it'll be mostly full of people like us, not fucking Rishi Sunaks and there's Penny Mordaunt, who was essentially a fucking SJW in the Tory party. She's all for the trans shit, yet she's a Tory. And I remember they hated Liz Truss, even though she's milquetoast as hell, because she reminded them of Thatcher. And I'm like, well, that means she's probably the most right wing we're ever going to get that isn't people like Braverman or what was the black girl called again? She has a Scottish name. Kemi Badenoch. Yeah. Although I don't think those two should be prime minister, not because I don't agree with them or anything. I think they're better served being influential kingmakers or queenmakers, personally. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. But this is a real simple solution to the black pill. It's really like, sure, things don't look good right now.
Yeah,
they can get a whole lot worse. They can get a whole lot worse. But the people that are behind all this stuff that are making things worse, they're some of the most spectacularly unremarkable, dumb, like people who would otherwise be ineffectual in any other category in life. Like if they were at a job, everybody would just be like, "Oh, shut up." You'd be like the person that everybody kind of like huddles, away from and be like, "What the fuck is with that?"
It's that meme when they go.
Yeah. It's exactly. It's like, okay, pal. Yeah, sure. And these are the people that. Do you really think that Dylan Mulvaney? Dylan Mulvaney, watch any one of his TikToks. Watch any one of his TikToks.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell me that this is someone that you need to like be like, this is the end. This is the person that's going to destroy everything that's good in this world.
No, it's the person behind them that's causing the problem.
No, the person behind them is even more unremarkable.
And this is the problem. Not everybody, most people on the right are so fixated on the person in front of them, who's very obviously just a front, that they don't think about the person behind them who's actually causing the problems.
Yeah, but when you find out when those people are, they are still unremarkable people that you would look at, like that you would laugh at if you saw them in an airport.
When we've had debates about like me, you, and some of the others in the flagpole, and I think there's some truth to what you say. I might be misrepresenting you when you say, well, it's not necessarily the people coming over who the illegals, it's really the system and the people in charge of the system, isn't it, really? The reason why we have the problem with the people coming over the English Channel isn't necessarily them. It's our country. It's the people running our country and the border force and the Navy. Why is it that they can't stop them coming over, and then when they do come in, they're not sent immediately back, and in many cases are put up in 4 or 5 star hotels, even if it's temporarily? We know it's temporarily, but it's not a good look when they're also in places where there's a lot of white working class areas or even underclass areas that would be very resentful of that. And in fact, it's not just them. Even minority areas who've been there for decades would also get resentful of that crap as well. Like,
well, it's all about the carrot that they dangle, right? Exactly, if you're dangling like, hey, come here, we give you everything that you need to live and survive. We give you 3 hots and a cot anywhere you want to.
Yeah, and then also,
be it from a hospital, like from a mental hospital, a jail, or Section 8 housing and welfare. Like if you're saying like, here, come on over, you can get free stuff, whatever, you're going to attract the worst kinds of people. But if you say like, hey, we don't offer that stuff, but we'll give you an opportunity to work, do something great with your life. The type of people you're going to attract are the good people who want to be like, yeah, I want to live in a place and better my life and better my situation and work hard to do it. That's how you do it.
I have a theory. I have a theory about a lot of the immigration as well, because it actually came from, do you know the Imam of Peace, the Australian guy?
Who? What was it?
He's called the Imam of Peace on Twitter. He's like he's an
I may
imam. He's an imam, but he's not a radical. He's quite the opposite. He's kind of like the Australian version of Majid Nawaz, but not as down the rabbit hole as he's become recently. Not that he's bad or anything, but the Imam of Peace, I forget his name. I think it's Tawhidi, Imam Tawhidi. He made an interesting point that in a lot of the Muslim countries, they don't actually have a fundamentalist problem necessarily. They don't at all because, well, they put them in jail and stuff like that. They don't tolerate it. But we have over here in Europe and sometimes in America. And I wonder, are we actually, because, people say, on the right and stuff like that, when it comes to mass immigration, like, we're just a destination for people and stuff like that. Like, where's our own culture and stuff? They complain about that, and but I think it's not that we're necessarily an ideal place for these people to go and stuff like that. I think we're a dumping ground, because if you look at it, a lot of the people who are causing problems, they're always fighting age men. The most recent wave, they're all men, aren't they? They're not really families necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So are we a dumping ground for the people they don't want? It's a theory I've come up with. I don't know if it's true, but it'd be interesting. And maybe the governments accept these people because it's Labour, isn't it? They're fighting age men. They think, they'll keep the economy going. Maybe, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
It's a theory that I've not really properly developed. It's probably wrong, but you never know. There's probably some truth to that. Why is it they don't have those problems, but over there, but we do? We have these problems, And then that goes into stuff like the decline of Christianity and stuff, which has been going on, because the census also pointed out that Christianity is now a minority. Most people aren't Christians anymore of the white population. And in general, people who would once say they're Christian on the census are no longer saying they are. And I personally think, my personal belief is clearly the religion isn't up to snuff anymore. Like they're looking for something else because they don't have anything. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is. It's not good enough for them. But I don't think Islam is either. Even though it's growing, it's dying in the Middle East. It's not very visible, but it is dying. It is.
That's probably because there's so much lockdown on it from the governments there, from preventing people from publicly admitting.
Look at Saudi Arabia.
Right. Like, but I mean, like, they're not allowed to really express it because of the government. So
they're not. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So that's probably why it doesn't look.
And then eventually it will be expressed. And then part of the immigration is also a lot of the more fundamentalists think, well, if we move to Europe, it'll survive there. Well, no, it's not going to. It's on borrowed time, because a lot of them get westernized anyway. For the many who don't, loads more do.
Yeah,
but that's just my opinion. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah,
we got off.
Yeah, so like I am not of the opinion that like getting people elected is like the best way of getting things done.
No,
I think, but that's not to say. It's not to say that I don't think
that's pragmatically though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is some pragmatic value in that. I don't think you're going to find that in the Libertarian Party. You're not going to find that in any other third party.
Yeah.
You're just going to, if at best, you're going to find people who are.
It's the big two parties. Like, if you can influence them in some way to be better than they are now, then that's better. Because I have to work with what I've got, and what I've got is a parliamentary system, and I've got mostly useless politicians who are behind the times. Well, the only logical solution I can think of is to put people in there who know what they're doing. And you know what's funny? Most of the really forward. This is what Luchin told me, because I actually kind of know him now. He told me that apart from a few, a lot of your really conservative-based politicians are not white British. A lot of them are Indian or whatever, which is true. It is. I think he exaggerates it, but it is true. So, like, I'm not thinking about ethnicity. I'm thinking ideology, more of those people in, and they're doing well by themselves, but we need more people in there, and if we don't, the country's going to slide down even further, and then obviously those people will get their doomsday scenarios. So that's what the video's not going to be about the topics themselves, like immigration and stuff like that. It'll just be, well, okay, this is the backdrop of our problems, this is the backdrop, what's the solution? And that's one that I've come up with. And then obviously I have to think of another solution, is why is the culture failing, or declining, and it's the same in America. The culture's not quite as strong as it used to be. And in France, although they're fighting back, And to be fair, they have a good chance of preserving theirs because it's a cultural thing, it's a civic nationalist thing, and I think even from what I've read and watched, even when it comes to the woke stuff, most people, whether they're white or black or Muslim or Christian, they're against it. Even French leftists are against wokeism. It's funny that, isn't it? Because they see it as an American import, which you might disagree, but I sympathise with that. But like back to Britain, like I was thinking, well, how do you make the culture more confident in itself and more likely to integrate new people coming in, and that's something I have to maybe not. I can't think of a solution for that, but I want to bring it up and say, well, clearly our culture needs to be reinvigorated, and people need to have confidence in it so they can assert it. And there's no other way of putting it. A melting pot is the dominant culture incorporating the others, isn't it? Really, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is. It's probably more so here than there.
That's what a lot of Romanian mates I've known talk about, because that's what they do apparently.
But I mean, if you look at like a lot of the like the immigrants that you see that come here and then end up becoming far more liberty oriented mentally. I mean, they usually come from really despotic, like just Ayn Rand, like this is like the Ayn Rand quote that I put on Twitter a while back, which is saying it's almost impossible to convey to a free people what it's like to live in a totalitarian dictatorship. I can tell you a lot of details, but I can never completely convince you because you are free. And it's like those type of people that come here from those really despotic regimes come here and they're like the most vocal people against it. I remember there was like this guy who would go around the Occupy, remember Occupy Wall Street? Remember when that was a thing? He would go around and he was from Russia. And he was there for the Soviet Union, and he was an adult when that happened. So he would like go and talk to him, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, communism is great" or whatever. And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, really, I was there. It was a nightmare." Explain like how it is a nightmare. And those are the sorts of people that like when they come here, I'm like, this is great. But as long as we're having these kind of cities that are just going like, hey, come here, get free healthcare, get free food, get free housing.
Like I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I'm mixed race, right? So for me, the race isn't important. I mean, it is weird. It is. I do find it very weird that London is not mostly white British and stuff. It is a very weird feeling, and probably not good. In fact, it isn't good. But it is what it is. So my opinion is, well, we need to turn them British. And if they and in my opinion, just like if it happened in America, you'd have to turn them into Americans, right? We're not really doing that, but that's a long history of a laissez-faire approach to it, where we say, whatever, let him be, he'll be fine. And many of them were, many of them weren't, and that's resulted in what we have now. So like, well, we've got to obviously change how we approach immigration, because I don't think a lot of people, like I know Sargon said this and others, we need a moratorium on it or have zero completely. And I'm like, I understand what you're getting at. You want to stop it completely to sort the mess out, but we're not at the stage where we can actually do that. And I don't know economically if we can either as well, because the system is predicated on people coming in to prop up the pension system and the welfare system, because they were also hoping people would continue having kids, which we have some kids being born, obviously, but it's going down, isn't the birth rate? The birth rate's gone down since the baby boomers. So that's not happened. So the only way you can offset that is immigration, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, that's partly why massive immigration
maybe
has become worse, but also because Blair wanted to spite the Tories. It wasn't about ruining the white race or anything like that, like some people say. It's not genocide or anything. It's purely spite, just to spite this one party. That's it. That's it. It's not this grand conspiracy. People are that petty.
Yeah, they're unremarkable. And
we're living with
a lot of these people are midwits. They're complete midwits.
And the thing is,
or less.
Thing is,
in the case of Fetterman, or less.
Yeah. I think just to top it off, just finish it off, like, well, they're here now. We have to deal with them. We have to live with them. We have to. There has to be a way of approaching them where we can make, because some of them do want to be British. A lot of them do. A lot of them don't. And well, you have to figure out a way to deal with the ones who don't and the ones who do. And that's something I'm not smart enough to deal with. But what I'm trying to say is that stop moaning, Stop decrying all this stuff and actually work with what you've got and deal with it. Come up with something that, as a group, we'll deal with something, and as the British people, I know we can. So, that's what I've been trying to do. It is what it is. There's no use crying about it.
Yep.
It's sad, but let's see what we can do. We can create a whole new, stronger culture, I reckon, and we don't have to sacrifice anything either. I think because we don't need to. We just need to. I'm of the belief we can software update, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah. By the way, I would highly recommend it because I just finished it. Michael Malice's new book, The White Pill.
Yeah.
Highly
I do
recommend it.
I'm gonna get it
Yeah.
at payday. Yeah.
It is great, and especially if you're really interested in the history of the Soviet Union. That's also a good primer. It goes over a lot of stuff, and you can dig into any one of these little stories that he talks
What's going to
about.
happen? People are going to clip this and make me out to be a racist, even though I'm actually.
No, that's the internet. That's the internet. Yeah, that's always going to be the internet. But yeah, it's a wholly remarkable book, and it's weird because like the argument is really short. And it's I don't want to spoil it. The argument's really short. The vast majority of the book is like, here's how the Soviet Union got started. Here's how it spread. Here's how bad it was. Here's how like there was little reforms that were going on. Here's how like other regimes in the area that the Soviets were like pretty much almost parallel states to, but not quite, like Romania. And here's how that ended. And here's how that ended. And here's how this ended. Now let me explain what the white pill is. Because the white pill is important to understand.
Yeah, Ceausescu got shot.
Why.
That's a white pill.
Yeah. Oh, and not only that, but like think about who Ceausescu was. He was a fucking a dumbass, and his wife was a college dropout, and she was always embarrassed by that. And he had this really dumb look on his face. He was really ugly, unremarkable, kind of dorky guy who would have got beat up. He would have got beat up in college. The age where people are over bullying, they would still bully him. And this guy ended up becoming like a brutal dictator. And he got his comeuppance because people were like,
Stalin was a manlet.
Yeah. And the people who took him, down were also not that much more remarkable than he was. Not to say they were bad people. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you're really concerned, like, about how awful things are, just look at the people who are like doing it to you.
I mean,
I'm sure you can find somebody who agrees with you, who's just a little bit more remarkable than they are.
I mean, the fact that Trump got elected and Brexit happened at the exact same time is a white pill. I mean, yeah, since then events have taken that path.
I'm not a big fan of Trump, but that was a white pill in a lot of ways.
Here's another thing. Speaking about American politics, one thing I have been interested in is DeSantis. I actually like him. I know that a lot of people don't on both sides. And
there's a lot of things to dislike him as a libertarian, but
obviously,
you can't use those little disagreements to like.
I admire that he does stuff.
All the good things that he does, yeah.
I admire that he actually does something, and it always seems to be from his own like philosophical perspective. It's not Nixon saying, "Oh, I'll do this conservative thing," then does affirmative action. It's like, no, I'm going to send these Mexicans or South American immigrants to that rich place. Just to make
I'm not a big fan of that.
No,
I'm not a big fan of that because you're using actual people for that. But at the same time, like it's as a troll, I'm looking at this like, oh, that's hilarious.
I was just thinking about what his end goal was, which is to show how racist they are. Which is a really good way of doing that. It's not just, oh, they're the real racists. No, they actually are. Look how they're reacting when it happens to them. But another thing is we don't have the
exact same arguments.
Yeah. We don't have one in this country. We're 10 years behind. And I think he or she is coming eventually, but they won't if we don't get our act together. And there's a false dichotomy. It's either him or Trump. But it's like, why can't it be both? Why can't it be... They can run against each other, what have you, but there's no reason why the DeSantis crowd and the Trump crowd can't coexist peacefully, because DeSantis, like, he even said it himself, like, he has this weird ability to, like, he has people from both camps liking him. Like, I know a guy who used to like Trump, who doesn't like Trump now, but not because he's a never Trump, it's because he felt betrayed by him for some political reason. He loves DeSantis, and Razorfist, on the other hand, doesn't particularly like him because he sees him as a rhino infiltrator. But I trust this other guy more than Razorfist on this, because if he thought DeSantis was like that, he wouldn't like him.
Yeah.
And
But-
I think
but-
the two can coexist. I think you can have
Yeah.
the MAGA and DeSantis together because they're both cut from the same cloth. I mean, yeah, he used to be a rhino, but he's not anymore. I think it's pretty clear that he is.
I'm fully okay with people who go like, oh, I was one way, but I'm not anymore. That's fine. But if it seems like it's being genuine, and it seems like it's being genuine from him,
Look, his
and
actions.
you can tell it was by his act. Yeah.
Look
by
what he
his
did to
actions, you can
Disney.
tell.
If he was a rhino, we wouldn't have done that.
No, he
No
would have
one had
pussed
ever
out.
done that. Yeah, all the other
Especially with how much hold Disney has over Florida.
He absolutely made a mockery of them. They've been running scared ever since. Like that alone shows he's an OG. He's a legit. Come on, guys.
And then you want to compare him to like people like Abbott, like who's the governor of Texas here. This guy does not do anything until he gets polling data. Like he spends so much money on polling data because he just polls everybody, and if it seems like he can get he doesn't do anything without a poll. He can't do anything without a poll.
Isn't
and anytime
because he's got a wheelchair.
yeah, he's a mess, and he keeps getting primaried, and he still beats the primary attempts. But someone needs to primary him. I think I don't know how term limits work here in Texas.
He's what we call in Britain a wet, or at least the Tories call him a wet, which is like a rhino, basically, right? He is, isn't he? Essentially, but he's
he's not,
late, isn't he?
What he does is very like what you would expect of a typical Republican. But he only comes to that after he does the polling. Like he only does it like after he polls people and goes like, how will this like alienate my base? Or will this help me with my base? Oh, all right, then we'll do it. Or, oh no, we won't do it.
There's Buc-ee's here. Yes.
Yeah. If he built more Buc-ee's, I'd vote for him. I don't care what else he does.
So how's this
bring
whole
fentanyl in the country? I don't care.
Is the Californian Democrat immigration wave still happening, or has that stopped a bit?
I'm not sure. I try to ignore California as much as I can. I'm a refugee there. I kind of feel like Ayn Rand. I left there and I was like, didn't look back. And I warned people about the totalitarianism that goes on there, even though it's not nearly as bad as what she was going through, but it's still bad there, and it's only getting worse.
I think
it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. Oh, so did I.
Yeah, because I'm heeding Malcolm Ellis's words. Read that first, and then Atlas Shrugged.
So I started reading Atlas Shrugged. I got through part 1, and when I made it through part 1, I was like, "Yes, I'm done." Because I really did not like the write. I really don't like her writing style in that, and it's you can blame the response to Fountainhead for that. And so I'm not even going to try to go through it again until I get through the Fountainhead. So, but I got a couple other books on my plate.
Probably better for the world than for the greater good types.
Yeah, but I got myself a copy of the Machiavellians, and I need to finish it because I keep getting distracted.
It's okay.
I think there's parts in there that I think that are important to learn, but the overall thesis is wrong. But I do think he's right.
Like a gospel for some people on the right, it's like, mate, it's not that impressive.
Yeah, but there's some nuggets in there that are gold, and especially when he talks about the difference between like Machiavelli and Dante. I think that's kind of important. But other than that, yeah, I'm just like, what the fuck is he talking about? There's a lot of parts.
A lot
in that
of the
book.
people he talks about are bloody socialists.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was a Trotskyite, so
yeah, he was. Yeah, former Trots. Are they really former Trots? That's the thing. Like,
so, anyways,
Trot, yeah, he's still a little bit lefty economically.
So where can they get more of your content before
you can find me in that channel down there somewhere, right? Smash it. Go on.
In the description
I'm losing
box.
subs, guys. Not that much. It goes up and down. But yeah, you can find me there. I will try and get a video done at some point this week. I've got a whole place to myself, so I've got plenty of time. Then I'll see what I can do first. I'm probably going to do the right-wing one first because it's my bread and butter these days. I don't want to moan about it too much. Just stuff I want to talk about. Like I want to talk about, I was doing a long-term project that I put on hold. So I was going to do a video on the fall of Rome and say, well, can you compare it to now? I read one book, and aside from one And in that book, apart from like 2 to 3 instances of similarities, no, you can't. It's not the same. Like we're talking about the destruction of half a civilization, not the whole thing, anyway. and even then, like as violent as some of it was, as peaceful as some of it was, at the end of the day, it's totally different. It's hard to explain. Like it's hard to explain. It was different back then. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Similar-ish things happened in Roman society, but they were totally different beasts to us.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being part of the inaugural episode.
Yes,
And
it went probably longer than you thought. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Beta.
well, actually, 2 hours ish is what I was kind of aiming for, but that's fine. But I do think there was one big problem with this whole episode, and I think I don't think we are going to get invited to the elite piss orgy now after some of the things we were talking about. So we'll try for episode 2.
We will.
We'll try to be more piss orgy friendly, so that way. So please, if you got this, please invite me to the piss orgy.
Are you sure about that?
I'll cut some dicks off. All right, worms.